Hello there, everyone. Welcome to Cryptic Corpse. I am your storyteller, and I'm here to guide you tonight. I know many of you use these videos to drift off to sleep, so before we begin, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. I'm always curious, where are you watching from, and what time is it in your part of the world? Now find your cozy spot and relax. My name is Jimmy Patterson, and I drink 23 shots of moonshine every night, one for each man who died in the dark while I lived. I count them out loud in my little cabin, same as I have for 13 years now. Bobby Miller, I say and drink. Frank Johnson, another shot burns down my throat. Tommy Richards. The whiskey tastes like guilt and coal dust. The mining helmets sit on my kitchen table, all 23 of them. I keep them clean and shiny, like the boys might come back for them someday, but they won't. They're buried under 1,000,000 tons of rock in the Hartwell mine, and I'm the fool who walked away. People in town don't talk to me much anymore. They know what happened, and they know I was the only one who made it out. Some folks think I'm lucky. Others think maybe I should have stayed down there with my friends. Most days I think they're right. That's why I started making moonshine in the old mines. If I'm gonna die, might as well be doing something that could kill me quick. The federal boys are always sniffing around these mountains, looking for stills like mine. Getting caught means prison, but staying in these tunnels means something worse might find me first. The mine where I work now isn't the same one that collapsed. That was Hartwell Mine, about 5 miles east. This one's called Devil's Backbone, and it's been empty for 20 years. The company pulled out after too many accidents. Said the mountain was cursed. Maybe they were right. I set up my still deep in the tunnels, past where most folks would dare to go. Got my copper pipes and my fire barrel all hidden where the sun don't shine. The work keeps my hands busy, but it don't keep my mind quiet. Down here in the dark I hear things. Water dripping, my own footsteps echoing. Sometimes, if I listen real hard, I hear voices. Just the mountains settling, I tell myself. Old mines make noise, everyone knows that. But these voices sound familiar, like men I used to work beside. Like men who died while I ran for the exit. My hands shake when I pour the mash. They shake a lot these days. Doc Miller says it's from the drinking, but I know better. They shake because they remember grabbing that support beam as the mine came down. They remember letting go too soon. I work alone down here, just me and my guilt. The federal boys think I'm crazy, living up in these mountains by myself. They don't understand that crazy is better than facing people in town. Crazy is better than seeing the wives and kids of men who ain't never coming home. Every morning, I walk the same path down into Devil's Backbone, past the old warning signs that say, "Danger, unstable mine," past the rusted chain that's supposed to keep folks out. I got my own key, made from a bent coat hanger and some patience. The tunnel mouth looks like a giant's mouth, all dark and hungry. Most people see that and turn around. Me? I walk right in, because I belong in the dark places now. My headlamp cuts through the black as I make my way deeper. The walls are wet with seepage, and the air smells like rust and old earth. Every step echoes, but sometimes the echoes don't match my footsteps. Sometimes they come back too late, like someone else is walking behind me. I tell myself it's nothing. Old mines play tricks on your ears. But deep down, I know the truth. These mountains remember every man who died in them, and they don't forget the ones who lived when they shouldn't have. The still is set up in what used to be a loading chamber, where miners would fill their carts with coal. Now, it's just me and my copper pipes, making poison strong enough to forget, or maybe strong enough to finally join my friends where they're waiting. I light the fire under my mash barrel and watch the flames dance on the tunnel walls. The shadows move like they're alive, like they're reaching for something, reaching for me. Another day in paradise, I whisper to the darkness. But the darkness whispers back, and it sounds like 23 voices calling my name. The fire under my still crackles, and I try not to think about that other fire, the one that started everything 13 years ago in Hartwell Mine. It was March 15th, 1973. Cold morning, frost on the ground. We went down into the earth like we did every day, 24 men with lunch pails and hope for overtime pay. None of us knew it would be the last time for most of us. I was working the far tunnel with Bobby Miller. He was telling me about his new baby girl, how she grabbed his finger with her tiny hand. "She's got a grip like a miner already," he said, and we both laughed. That's when we heard the first rumble. Deep in the mountain, something moved. The walls shook, and dust fell from the ceiling like snow. We stopped talking. We stopped breathing. Every miner knows that sound. It's the mountain saying goodbye. "Run!" Bobby whispered, but there was nowhere to run to. The tunnel filled with noise, rocks falling, men shouting, the mountain eating itself from the inside out. I grabbed Bobby's arm and pulled him toward the main shaft, but the ceiling came down between us. 1 second he was there, the next second there was just a wall of stone. I called his name until my throat was raw, called all their names, but the only answer was silence. I found a pocket of air and waited for the rescue teams, waited for someone to dig me out. I had water from a broken pipe and stale air that tasted like fear. For 3 days, I waited in the dark. When they finally pulled me out, I was the only one breathing. Now, sitting. By my still 13 years later, I can still hear that rumble, still feel the mountain shaking, still see Bobby's face right before the rocks took him away. I shake my head and check my mash. The corn and sugar are cooking just right, turning into something that burns going down. Something that helps me forget, at least for a while. That's when I hear it. Tap, tap, tap. Someone's hitting metal against stone, way back in the tunnels. The sound echoes off the walls, getting louder and softer like a heartbeat. I turn off my headlamp and listen. The tapping stops. "Hello?" I call out. Nothing. I turn my light back on and keep working. Probably just the mountains settling. Old. Mines make all kinds of noise. Pipes expanding, rocks shifting, nothing to worry about. But the tapping starts again, and this time it's closer. Tap, tap, tap. It sounds like a pickaxe hitting coal, like someone's working back there in the dark tunnels, but that's impossible. Nobody comes down here except me. I grab my flashlight and walk toward the sound. My boots splash through puddles, and every step echoes. The tapping gets louder as I get closer to the old mining section. "Who's there?" I call out. The tapping stops. I shine my light down the tunnel, nothing but empty darkness and old rail tracks covered in rust. But something's wrong. The tracks look different, cleaner, like someone's been using them. I bend down and touch the metal. It's not rusty anymore. It's shiny, like it was polished yesterday. That's when I smell it. Fresh coal dust in the air, sweet and sharp, like the smell that used to fill my nose every working day. But this tunnel hasn't seen coal in 20 years. I stand up fast, my heart beating hard. Something's not right here. Something's very wrong. A voice echoes from deeper in the tunnel, faint, like it's coming from far away. "Jimmy, Jimmy, you there?" I know that voice. It's Bobby Miller. But Bobby Miller died 13 years ago. I run back to my still as fast as I can, stumbling over loose rocks and splashing through dirty water. My breath comes in short gasps, and my hands shake worse than usual. Behind me I hear footsteps, slow and steady, like someone walking to work, like someone who's got all the time in the world. I reach my still and grab the mason. Jar of moonshine I keep for emergencies. Take a long drink that burns all the way down. The whiskey helps, but it doesn't stop the footsteps. They're getting closer. I turn around with my flashlight, sweeping the beam across the tunnel. Empty. Nothing but shadows and wet walls. But I can hear breathing that isn't mine. "Bobby?" I whisper. No answer. I take another drink and try to think straight. Maybe it's the fumes from the still. Maybe it's too much moonshine and not enough sleep. Maybe my mind is finally cracking after all these years of guilt. But the breathing is still there, just outside my circle of light. I sit down on an old wooden crate and put my head in my hands. Get it together, Jimmy, I tell myself. Dead men don't walk around in mines. That's when someone taps me on the shoulder. I spin around, but there's nothing there. Just empty air and the smell of coal dust. The fire under my still flickers, and for just a second I see something in the shadows. A man in mining clothes, his face covered in black dust. He looks like Bobby, but his eyes are wrong. They're too dark, like holes in his head. I blink, and he's gone. But I can still hear him whispering my name. I don't sleep that night. Every time I close my eyes, I see Bobby's face in the shadows. So I sit by my kitchen table with the mining helmets, drinking and waiting for morning. But morning doesn't come. I check my watch. It says 3:17 a.m., same as it did an hour ago. The hands aren't moving. I shake it, tap the glass, but the time stays frozen. Outside my cabin window, it's still dark. No hint of sunrise, no birds singing. Just silence so thick it hurts my ears. Something's wrong with the world. I grab my flashlight and head back down to the mine. Maybe working will help. Clear my head. Maybe the familiar sounds of dripping water and my own footsteps will make things normal again. But the mine isn't normal either. The tunnel that leads to my still is different, longer than before. The walls are closer together, pressing in like they want to squeeze me flat. My light doesn't reach as far as it should. I walk for what feels like hours, but I can't find my still. The tunnel just keeps going and going, deeper into the mountain. The air gets thicker, harder to breathe. That's when I hear the voices. Not just one voice, this is our time, all of them. All 23 men from Hartwell Mine, talking and laughing like they're heading to work. "Morning, Jimmy," says Frank Johnson. "Are you coming with us today?" asks Tommy Richards. I spin around, but there's nobody there, just my own shadow dancing on the wet walls. "I'm losing my mind," I whisper, but the voices keep talking, getting louder. They're all around me now, coming. And from the walls, from the ceiling, from under my feet. "Why'd you run, Jimmy?" Bobby Miller's voice is sad and angry at the same time. "Why didn't you help us?" asks another voice I recognize. Pete Watson, who had 5 kids at home. I put my hands over my ears, but it doesn't help. The voices are inside my head now. "You could have saved us," they say together. "You were closest to the exit. You could have warned us. I tried," I shout into the darkness. "I called out. I tried to get to you." But they don't listen. They never listen. The tunnel starts to shake. Dust falls from the ceiling, just like that day 13 years ago. The walls groan and crack. Rocks start falling. It's happening again. I run toward where I think the exit should be, but the tunnel stretches on forever. Behind me, I hear the mountain falling apart. I hear my friends screaming for help. I reach a wall of fallen stone, just like before, but this time I can hear them on the other side, still alive, still calling my name. "Help us, Jimmy! Don't leave us!" I start digging with my bare hands, pulling rocks away until my fingers bleed. But for every rock I move, 2 more take its place. "I'm trying!" I scream. "I'm trying to help!" But it's too late. It's always too late. The voices get quiet one by one until there's only silence and the smell of death. Then I'm standing in my tunnel again, by my still, like nothing happened. My watch says 3:17 a.m. The fire under my mash barrel is still burning, but my hands are still bleeding from digging at rocks that aren't there. I take a long drink of moonshine and try to think, what's happening to me? Am I sick? Am I dying? Or is something else going on? That's when I see it. A shadow moves at the edge of my light. Not a regular shadow. This one moves wrong, like it's made of thick black water. It's tall and thin, with arms too long for its body. I point my flashlight at it, but the light goes right through it. The shadow turns toward me, and I see its face, or what should be a face. Instead, there are just 2 yellow eyes, bright as headlamps. They look right into me, like they can see every bad thing I've ever done. "Hello, Jimmy," it says. Its voice Sounds like coal falling down a chute. I've been waiting for you. What are you? I whisper. I'm what grows in the dark places, it says. I'm what feeds on the guilt you carry. And you carry so much guilt, Jimmy. So much pain. The thing moves closer, and I can feel cold coming off it like winter air. The men who died, it says, they're not really gone. They're here with me in the darkness, and they're angry, Jimmy, so very angry at the man who lived when they died. That's not true, I say, but my voice shakes. Isn't it? The yellow eyes get brighter. You were the fastest runner. You knew the mine better than anyone. You could have saved them all. The shadow reaches out with one long arm, and where it touches the air, I see pictures. Pictures of that day 13 years ago, but different. In these pictures, I'm warning everyone about the cave-in. I'm helping them escape. I'm the hero instead of the coward. You chose yourself over them, the thing says, and now you drink. Their names every night, trying to wash away the truth. But the truth doesn't wash away, Jimmy. It just gets stronger. I want to run, but my legs won't move. I want to scream, but no sound comes out. I can help you, the shadow says. I can take away your guilt. All you have to do is stay here with me. Stay in the darkness where you belong. The yellow eyes fill my whole world now. In them, I see myself as I really am. Not a survivor, not even a man, just a coward who let his friends die. And maybe that's all I've ever been. I blink, and I'm back in Hartwell Mine on March 15th, 1973. The air smells like fresh coal and machine oil. My lunch pail sits next to me, still warm from the coffee inside. Bobby Miller is right there, talking about his baby girl again. She's got a grip like a miner already, he says, same words as before. But this time, I know what's coming. Bobby, we need to get out, I say, grabbing his arm. The mine's going to collapse. He looks at me funny. What are you talking about, Jimmy? We just got here. The rumble starts deep in the mountain, right on time. Listen, I shout. You hear that? We need to run. But Bobby can't hear it yet. None of them can. The rumble is still too far away, too quiet. In a few seconds, it'll be too late. I try to pull Bobby toward the exit, but he won't move. Jimmy, you're acting crazy, he says. The tunnel fills with noise. Rocks start falling. I run for the main shaft, but this time I don't leave Bobby behind. I grab him and drag him with me, but the ceiling comes down anyway. The rocks take him away from me, same as before. No! I scream, clawing at the stones. This time I'll save you! But I can't. I never can. The rescue team pulls me out 3 days later, alone, just like always. I blink again, and I'm back in Devil's Backbone Mine with the shadow creature. Its yellow eyes are brighter now, like it just ate a good meal. Again, it says in its coal-falling voice. And I'm back in Hartwell Mine, March 15th, 1973. This time I try to warn everyone at once. I stand up and shout, "The mine's going to collapse! Everyone run!" They look at me like I'm drunk. Some of them laugh. "Sit down, Jimmy," says Frank Johnson. "You're scaring the new guys." The rumble starts. The ceiling falls. They all die. I save nobody. Again. Hartwell Mine, March 15th, 1973. I try running to the foreman's office to call for help, but the phone lines are already cut. The mountain is already falling. Again. This time I try to break a support beam early, to make noise, to warn everyone, but my pickaxe bounces off the wood like it's made of steel. Again. I try to start a fire in the tunnel, thinking the smoke will force everyone out, but the matches won't light. Again. Each time I think I'm smarter. Each time I think I'll find a way, but the mountain always wins. My friends always die, and I always survive. The shadow creature gets bigger with each loop, fatter, happier. "You're feeding it," says a voice behind me. I turn around. There's a woman sitting in the corner of the tunnel, but she's not really there. She looks like she's made of grey smoke. "Who are you?" I ask. "My name was Sarah," she says. "I died in the Black Rock mine disaster, 1962. 12 people died. I lived. She points to another shadow person across the tunnel. That's Mike. He survived the Copper Creek collapse in 1981. 15 dead. More shadow people appear. Men and women, all sitting in the darkness, all looking empty and tired. How many of you are there? I whisper. Everyone who ever survived. When others died, Sarah says, everyone who carries the guilt. It finds us, it feeds on us, it keeps us here. How long have you been here? Time doesn't work right in this place, she says. Could be days, could be years. The creature keeps us in our disaster loops, and we feed it our guilt over and over. I look around at all the shadow people. Some of them are very faint, like they're almost gone. What happens when it's done feeding, I ask. Sarah's smoke face gets sadder. Look at Robert over there. He's been here longest. Survived a mine fire in 1943. I look where she's pointing. There's barely anything left of Robert. Just a whisper of grey smoke and two dim eyes. It doesn't kill us, Sarah says. It just eats our guilt until there's nothing left. Then we disappear. The shadow creature appears next to me. Its yellow eyes are so bright now they hurt to look at. Time for another loop, Jimmy, it says. Time to fail your friends again. No, I say. I won't do it anymore. The creature laughs, and the sound is like rocks grinding together. You don't have a choice. The guilt is too strong. It owns you now. I feel myself getting pulled back into the loop. Back to March 15th, 1973. Back to the day I let my friends die. But this time, something's different. This time I'm not alone. I can see the other survivors with me, all of us trapped in our own disasters. Sarah in her mine fire, Mike in his cave-in, all of us failing to save the people we loved. And I realize something important. The creature isn't just feeding on my guilt, it's feeding on all of us. All our pain, all our regret, all our self-hate, that's what makes it strong. But maybe if we stopped hating ourselves, it would get weak. Maybe if we forgave ourselves, it would starve. I look at the shadow creature and see something new in its yellow eyes. Fear. It knows what I'm thinking, and it doesn't like it one bit. Time for another loop, Jimmy, it says, but its voice sounds worried now. I smile for the first time in 13 years. No, I say, I don't think so. The shadow creature grows bigger, angrier. Its yellow eyes flash like lightning. You will go back, it says. You will live your guilt forever. You deserve it. But I shake my head. Maybe I do deserve it. But my friends wouldn't want this for me. I think about Bobby Miller talking about his baby girl. He was happy that day. He was full of love. Would he want me to spend forever hating myself? Bobby wouldn't want me to suffer, I say out loud. None of them would. The creature screams, and the sound makes the tunnel walls shake. Rocks fall from the ceiling, but they pass right through me like I'm made of air. You let them die, it shouts. You're a coward. You're nothing. Maybe, I say, but I'm still here, and maybe that means something. I look at the other shadow people. Sarah, Mike, Robert, and all the rest. They're watching me with hope in their dim eyes. Listen to me, I tell them. This thing feeds on our guilt. It needs us to hate ourselves. But what if we don't? Sarah's smoke face gets a little brighter. You mean forgive ourselves? I mean, remember that we're human, I say. Humans make mistakes. Humans get scared, but that doesn't make us evil. The creature roars and lunges at me with its long arms, but when it touches me, nothing happens. Its claws pass right through. You're getting weaker, I tell it, because I'm not feeding you anymore. I turn to the other survivors. Think about the people you couldn't save. Do you think they'd want you to suffer forever? Mike, the man from the 1981 collapse, starts to look more solid. My brother Tom died in that cave-in. But Tom always said life was for living, not for crying. The creature shrieks and attacks Mike, but its claws pass through him too. One by one, the other survivors start to remember their dead loved ones. Not as guilt, but as people who cared about them, people who would want them to be happy. The creature gets smaller and smaller. Its yellow eyes get dimmer. "This is not how it ends," it screams. "You belong to me. You belong in the darkness." "No," I say. "We belong with the living, and our dead friends belong in our hearts, not in our guilt." I walk over to my still and pick up the jar of moonshine, the one I've been using, to drown my sorrow for 13 years. "I'm sorry I couldn't save you, Bobby," I say to the empty tunnel. "I'm sorry I couldn't save any of you, but I don't think you'd want me to die for it." I pour the moonshine on the ground. All of it. The creature screams one last time, and then it's gone. Just shadows and echoes. The other survivors start to fade too, but they're smiling now, happy to finally be free. "Thank you," Sarah says as she disappears. "Take care of yourself," Mike says. One by one, they all fade away, until it's just me in the tunnel with my still and my memories. But the memories don't hurt as much now. They're still sad, but they're not poison anymore. They're just the weight of being alive when others aren't. And maybe that's a weight worth carrying if it means remembering them right. I walk out of Devil's Backbone Mine and into the morning light. Real morning light this time. My watch says 6:30 a.m. and the hands are moving again. The world looks different, brighter, like I've been wearing dark glasses for 13 years and finally took them off. I go back to my cabin and look at the 23 mining helmets on my kitchen table. They're still there, still clean and shiny, but now they look like what they really are. Reminders of good men who lived and worked and laughed, not burdens I have to carry. I pick up Bobby's helmet and turn it over in my hands. There's a picture taped inside, his wife and baby girl, smiling at the camera. "I'll remember you," I tell the picture, "but I'll remember the good parts too." I put the helmet back on the table and walk outside. The mountain air smells clean and fresh. Birds are singing in the trees. The world is full of life. For the first time in 13 years, I feel like I'm part of it. But as I stand there on my porch, I hear something that makes my blood run cold. A car engine coming up the mountain road, getting closer. I watch as an old pickup truck pulls into my driveway. The driver gets out slowly, like he's carrying a heavy weight. He's about my age, with tired eyes and shaking hands. He looks up at me and nods. "You Jimmy Patterson?" "Yeah," I say. "I heard you live up here alone, in the mountains." He looks toward Devil's Backbone Mine. "I heard you understand about things." "What things?" The man's eyes fill with tears. "I was in the Riverside Mill fire last month. 12 people died. I was the only one who made it out." My heart sinks. I know that look. I know that pain. "I can't sleep," he says. "I keep hearing their voices. And I swear sometimes I see them, just at the edge of my vision. I look at the man, then at the mine entrance, then back at the man." "What's your name?" I ask. "David," he says. "David Collins." I nod and step off my porch. "Well, David, I think you and I need to have a talk." As we walk toward my cabin, I can't help but glance back at Devil's Backbone Mine. The entrance is dark and quiet now, empty. But I know it won't stay that way forever. Some things never really die. They just wait. In the darkness for the next person who carries too much guilt. And there's always someone carrying too much guilt. Always. My name is Sarah Martinez, and I used to be Captain Martinez in the Army. That was before everything went wrong, before the voices in my head got too loud, before they sent me home and told me I was unfit for duty. I'm 35 years old now, and I live alone on a cliff by the ocean. The old Coast Guard station has been empty for years, but it's perfect for me. Nobody comes here, nobody bothers me. Just me, my radio equipment, and the endless sound of waves crashing below. The rain never stops here on the Olympic Peninsula. It drums on the metal roof day and night, like static on an old radio. The trees, are so thick and tall that even in the daytime it feels like evening. Fog rolls in from the ocean every morning, covering everything in grey mist. I picked this place because it's far from everyone. 80 miles to the nearest town. No roads leading here, just an old boat dock that's half broken from storms. When the weather gets bad, which is most of the time, nobody can get in or out. That's exactly how I like it. People think I'm crazy for living out here alone. Maybe they're right, but they don't understand what it's like to have voices in your head all the time. Voices of soldiers screaming, voices begging for help. Voices that I heard through my radio headset when I was still in the army. I was good at my job back then, really good. I could pick up enemy radio signals from miles away. I could break their codes and figure out what they were planning. My commanding officers called me the best radio operator they'd ever seen. But being good at listening meant I heard things I wasn't supposed to hear, things that kept me awake at night. Enemy soldiers talking about our captured men, describing what they were doing to them, how they were hurting them, how they were dying. The voices followed me home. Even when I took off my headset, I could still hear them. Even when the radio was turned off, the screaming continued in my head. The army doctor said it was PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. They gave me pills and told me to rest. But the pills didn't work. The voices got louder. I started staying awake for days, listening to emergency radio frequencies, trying to help people who called for rescue. I thought if I could save someone, anyone, maybe the voices would go away. That's when they discharged me. Said I was having a psychological breakdown. Said I needed help they couldn't give me. They were probably right, but it still hurt. So I took my military savings and bought this old Coast Guard station. It sits on a cliff about 100 feet above the ocean. The building is small, just a few rooms and a tower with a big radio antenna. Everything is painted white, but the paint is peeling from the salt air and constant rain. Inside, I've set up the most advanced radio equipment I could afford. Multiple transceivers, emergency scanners, weather radios, and a powerful antenna array on the roof. I can pick up signals from hundreds of miles away. Coast Guard, police, fire departments, ship-to-shore communications, even airplane chatter. I keep detailed logs of everything. Every transmission, every frequency, every voice I hear, I write it all down in notebooks with precise timestamps. It helps me feel in control, like I'm still doing something important. My daily routine never changes. I wake up at 500 hours. Old military habits die hard. First thing I do is check all my equipment. Make sure every radio is working, every antenna is secure, every backup power system is ready. Then I start my listening schedule. Emergency frequencies from 0600 to 800. Marine radio from 800 to 1000. Aviation channels from 1000 to 1200. I eat lunch while monitoring weather reports. Afternoons are for maintenance and checking weaker signals. The local Native American tribe, the Makah, have stories about this place. They say there are spirits here that steal voices. They call them voice thieves. The old fishermen in town claim they sometimes hear their own voices talking back to them on their marine radios when they pass by this cliff. I always thought those were just stories, superstitions, but living out here alone with just the rain and the wind and the static, sometimes I wonder if there's truth in old legends. The hardest part about living here isn't the isolation or the storms. It's the fear that someday my radios will stop working, that I'll lose contact with the outside world completely, that I'll be truly alone with just the voices in my head. But for now, my equipment works perfectly. Better than it should, actually. I get clearer signals here than I ever did in the army. Sometimes I pick up transmissions from places that should be too far away, but I tell myself it's just good atmospheric conditions. Radio waves can travel strange distances sometimes. 3 months ago, I noticed something odd. My equipment was working too well. Signals that should have been weak and full of static were coming in crystal clear. I was picking up radio chatter from ships in the middle of the Pacific, conversations from small airports in Alaska, even amateur radio operators in other countries. At first, I was excited. Better reception meant I could help more people. I could monitor more emergency frequencies, listen for anyone who might need rescue. But now, I'm starting to wonder if something else is going on. The rain is getting heavier. Outside, the wind is picking up, making the antenna tower creak and sway. Time for my evening radio check. I'll scan through all the emergency frequencies, listen to the Coast Guard channels, maybe pick up some ship traffic. Just another quiet night alone on the cliff. Just me and my radios and the endless sound of static mixing with rain. It started on a Tuesday night in October. I remember because I was listening to the Coast Guard weather report at exactly 2100 hours. The storm was supposed to get worse over the next few days. Nothing unusual about that. Storms here can last for weeks. I was about to switch to the marine emergency frequency when I heard something that made me freeze. A voice speaking in a language I'd never heard before. The words sounded almost human, but not quite right. Like someone trying to speak with their mouth full of water. The signal was coming through on 156.8 MHz, the standard marine distress frequency. But that was impossible. That frequency is monitored by the Coast Guard 24 hours a day. If someone was broadcasting an unknown language on the emergency channel, they would have responded immediately. I grabbed my headphones and listened closer. The voice was clear as day. No static, no interference. It was speaking in steady, calm tones, like reading from a script. Every few seconds, I heard what sounded like coordinates being rattled off in English. 47 degrees, 58 minutes north. 124 degrees, 43 minutes west. Those coordinates were less than 10 miles from my station. I checked my equipment. Everything was working normally. I tuned to other frequencies and heard the usual chatter. Fishing boats, cargo ships, Coast Guard routine calls. But when I went back to the emergency frequency, the strange voice was still there. I opened my logbook and started writing. Time, Jutai 103 hours. Frequency, 156.8 Hz. Unknown language transmission with English coordinates. Signal strength, perfect, no interference. The voice continued for exactly 15 minutes, then stopped. The frequency went back to normal Coast Guard communications, as if nothing had happened. I told myself it was probably just a foreign fishing vessel with a broken radio. Maybe their equipment was stuck on the wrong frequency. These things happen. Radio waves bounce off the atmosphere in strange ways. Signals from the other side of the world sometimes show up where they shouldn't. But I couldn't stop thinking about those coordinates. They were pointing to an empty patch of ocean just off the coast. No islands, no ships on my radar. Nothing but deep water. The next night I was ready. I had all my equipment tuned and waiting at 2100 hours. Right on schedule, the voice came back. Same frequency, same perfect signal, same strange language. But this time the coordinates were different. 48 degrees, 12 minutes north. 125 degrees, 17 minutes west. I plotted them on my navigation chart. Now the coordinates were pointing to a spot about 30 miles inland, deep in the Olympic Mountains. There were no roads there, no towns, no radio towers, nothing but thick forest and mountain peaks. For the next week, the voice appeared every night at the same time. Always 15 minutes, always perfect signal quality, and always coordinates pointing to random spots around the Olympic Peninsula. I started recording the transmissions on my cassette recorder. When I played them back during the day, the voice sounded even stranger. There was something not quite human about the rhythm of the speech, like it was trying to copy how people talk, but getting it slightly wrong. On the 8th night, something changed. The voice was speaking English. Station KJ7ABC, Station KJ7ABC, do you copy? I nearly dropped my headphones. KJ7ABC was my call sign, the one I used when I was still in the army. Nobody should know that. Call sign. It wasn't registered anywhere. I'd never used it on civilian radio. My hands were shaking as I reached for the microphone. Every instinct told me to respond, but something else, some deeper fear, kept me quiet. Station KJ7ABC, we know you're listening. Please respond. The voice was perfectly calm. No emotion, no urgency, just patient and waiting. I sat in my chair, heart pounding, staring at the microphone. The voice repeated the call 3 more times, then went quiet. The frequency returned to normal. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I kept thinking about that call sign. How could anyone know it? I'd created it myself during training, combining random letters and numbers. I'd never written it down, never told anyone. It existed only in my memory. The next morning, I went through all my old military paperwork, discharge documents, training, records, communication logs. There was no mention of KJ7ABC anywhere. As far as official records were concerned, that call sign had never existed. But someone knew it. Someone was using it to call me. I spent the day checking my equipment for problems. Maybe someone had hacked into my radio somehow. Maybe they were using my own transmitter to broadcast these signals. But everything checked out normal. No unauthorized access, no foreign signals being transmitted from my station. As evening approached, I felt a cold knot forming in my stomach. Part of me wanted to turn off all the radios and go to bed early, pretend nothing was happening, but I needed to know what was going on. At 2100 hours I was listening. Station KJ7ABC, this is station KJ7DEF. Do you copy? KJ7DEF. That was my backup call sign, the one I'd created in case I ever needed a second. Frequency during operations. A call sign that existed only in my head. This time, the voice sounded different, more familiar somehow. It took me a moment to realize why. It sounded like me, not exactly, but close enough to be disturbing. Like hearing your own voice played back on a recording, but with the pitch slightly wrong. Sarah, we need to talk. The voice knew my name. It was using my own call signs, and now it sounded like me. I grabbed the microphone with trembling hands. Who is this? I whispered into the radio. Static filled the frequency for a long moment. Then the voice came back, clearer than ever. You know who this is, Sarah. You've been listening to us for weeks. We've been trying to reach you. Reach me from where? Another pause. In the background, I could hear something that sounded like wind, or maybe static, or maybe voices too, distant to understand. From the other side, the voice said, from the place where everything went wrong. The transmission ended. The frequency went quiet. I sat in the dark, rain drumming on the roof, trying to make sense of what I'd heard. The other side of what? What did it mean that everything went wrong? But deep down, I was starting to suspect. I already knew. The next few nights were quiet. No strange voices, no impossible transmissions, just normal radio chatter and the usual static. I started to wonder if I'd imagined the whole thing. Maybe the isolation was getting to me worse than I thought. Maybe my PTSD was making me hear things that weren't there. I almost convinced myself it was all in my head, almost. Then, on Friday night, I heard a voice I recognized. A voice I hadn't heard in 3 years. Sarah, can you hear me? It's Tommy. I dropped my coffee mug. It shattered on the floor, but I barely noticed. Tommy Rodriguez had been my radio partner in Afghanistan. We'd worked together for 8 months, monitoring enemy communications from our base outside Kandahar. Tommy had been killed by a roadside bomb in 2019. Tommy's dead, I whispered to the empty room. I know, the voice said through my radio speakers. I know I'm dead, Sarah, but I'm still here. We're all still here. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the microphone. This isn't real. You're not Tommy. Tommy's buried in Arlington Cemetery. Remember the night we picked up that Taliban transmission? Tommy's voice continued, calm and patient. The one where they were planning to attack the supply convoy? You wanted to break radio silence to warn them, but I stopped you. I said we had to follow orders. I remembered. That night had haunted me for years. We'd followed protocol and reported the intelligence through proper channels, but the warning came too late. 12 soldiers died in that convoy attack. Only you and I knew about that conversation, Tommy's voice said. No one else was in the radio tent that night. How would anyone else know? He was right. We'd never put that conversation in any report. We'd never told anyone about my moment of doubt, my urge to break protocol. It was our secret. Tommy, if this is really you, where are you? Somewhere else, Sarah. Somewhere things went different. We lost the war here. Not just in Afghanistan, everywhere. The things we were fighting, they won. What things? What are you talking about? The creatures. The ones that live in the dark places between radio waves. They've been listening to us for years, learning from our communications. In this world, they figured out how to come through the signals, how to take over. My blood felt like ice water. That's impossible. Is it? You've seen how well your equipment works now. How clear the signals are. That's not better atmospheric conditions, Sarah. That's them, making it easier to reach you. I looked around my radio room, at all the equipment that had been working so perfectly, at the displays showing impossible signal strength readings, at the logbooks full of transmissions from places that should be too far away. Why me? I asked. Because you're like us. You've spent so much time listening to radio voices that part of you lives in the signals now. You can hear between the frequencies. You can reach across to where we are. Where exactly are you? A world where the creatures won, where they came through the radios and took over everything. Most people are gone now. A few of us are still here, still trying to warn other worlds before the same thing happens to them. The transmission cut to static for a moment. When Tommy's voice came back, it sounded more distant. Sarah, listen to me carefully. They're already in your world. They've been coming through communication networks for months. They start with isolated radio operators like you. People who spend their lives listening to voices in the dark. What do they want? They want to exist in the physical world instead of just living in electronic signals. To do that, they need human voices. They steal them one by one until they can speak for themselves. I thought about the voice that had known my call signs, the voice that had sounded almost like me. Tommy, how do I know you're really you? How do I know you're not one of them? There was a long pause. Then Tommy's voice came back softer now. You don't. That's the scary part, Sarah. Once they start talking to you, you can never be sure who's real anymore. But I'm trying to warn you while I still can. Warn me about what? They're going to start using voices of people you know, people you trust. They'll tell you things only those people would know. They'll sound exactly right. But they're not your friends, Sarah. They're learning to copy us perfectly. The radio went quiet. I waited for more, but Tommy's voice didn't come back. Over the next week, more voices started appearing. Always at night, always on frequencies I was monitoring. Some I recognized, some I didn't. I heard Sergeant Jackson, my old training instructor. He told me about the time I'd failed my first radio test and cried in the bathroom afterward. No one else knew about that. I heard my college roommate Lisa talking about the night we'd snuck out of the dorm to meet boys. She remembered details I'd forgotten myself. I heard my grandmother, who died when I was 12. She sang the lullaby she used to sing when I couldn't sleep. Her voice sounded exactly the same as I remembered. Each voice knew things they shouldn't know. Personal things, secret things, things I'd never told anyone, but they all had the same message. They were trying to reach me from somewhere else, somewhere things had gone wrong, somewhere creatures had won a war against humanity. I started sleeping during the day and staying awake all night, listening to every transmission. My logbooks filled up with impossible conversations. My cassette tapes captured hours of voices that shouldn't exist. The worst part was that they all sounded so real, so genuinely concerned about me. They warned me about the creatures, told me to be careful, advised me on how to protect myself, but late at night, when I was alone with just the static and the rain, I wondered if Tommy had been right. Once they start talking to you, you can never be sure who's real anymore. Because if these voices were the creatures Tommy had warned me about, they were doing a perfect job of pretending to be my friends. And if they could copy the voices of dead people this accurately, what else could they do? 2 weeks after Tommy first contacted me, I heard the most disturbing transmission yet. It came through on multiple frequencies at once, as if someone was broadcasting on every channel simultaneously. It was my own voice. "Sarah, this is Sarah. Do you copy?" I stared at the radio in horror. My own voice was calling me clear as day, with no static or interference. "I know you're listening," my voice continued. "I know you're scared, but you need to understand what's happening to you." I grabbed the microphone with trembling hands. "What are you?" "I'm you," my voice replied, "from a world where you made different choices, where you didn't isolate yourself on this cliff, where you got the help you needed. That's impossible, is it? You've been talking to dead people for weeks. You've heard voices from places that don't exist. Why is this any more impossible than that?" My voice was right. After everything I'd experienced, why was this any harder to believe? "What do you want?" "To show you something," my voice said. "Tomorrow night, tune to frequency 243.0. That's the emergency frequency that doesn't officially exist. Listen carefully, and you'll understand everything." The transmission ended. I sat in the dark, listening to the rain and the static, trying to process what had just happened. My own voice had given me instructions, had told me to tune to a frequency that shouldn't exist, but I knew I was going to do it, because after weeks of impossible transmissions, I needed to know the truth, even if the truth was more terrifying than anything I could imagine. I spent the entire next day checking frequency 243.0. According to every manual I owned, that frequency didn't exist. Military emergency frequencies went from 243.0 to 243.9, but 243.0 itself was supposed to be empty space between channels, dead air. But when I tuned my radio to exactly 243.0 megahertz, I got a signal, not voices this time, just a steady beeping sound, like a heartbeat. Beep, 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 perfectly timed, every 2 seconds. It had been broadcasting all day, probably, for weeks, and I'd never noticed it before. As night fell, I sat at my radio desk with all my equipment ready, recording devices running, logbooks open, backup power systems charged. If something big was going to happen, I wanted to document every second of it. At exactly 2100 hours, the beeping stopped. Silence filled the frequency for a long moment. Then I heard voices, not one or two like before, dozens of them, all talking at once, creating a wall of sound that should have been impossible to understand. But somehow I could hear each voice clearly, like having dozens of conversations in my head at the same time. "Sarah, can you hear us? We've been waiting so long. Finally, someone who can listen properly. She's perfect for what we need. The connection is getting stronger. Soon we can cross over completely." I recognized some of the voices. Tommy was there, my grandmother. People from my past, all talking together like they were at a party I couldn't see. "What do you want from me?" I whispered into the microphone. The voices stopped talking all at once. Perfect silence. Then one voice came through, my own voice, the one from the night before. "We want to show you the truth, Sarah, about what happened to our world, about what's happening to yours." The frequency filled with new sounds, not voices this time, but recordings. News broadcasts, emergency transmissions, radio chatter, all mixed together into a horrifying symphony. "This is CNN breaking news. Strange electronic anomalies are being reported across the globe. Mayday, mayday, all aircraft in the area. Our instruments are going crazy. We're seeing things that can't be there. Emergency services are overwhelmed as electronic devices worldwide begin malfunctioning. The creatures appeared first in our communication networks. Cell phones, radios, internet connections. They lived in the signals, learning how we talked, how we thought. Military command has lost contact with most units. Electronic warfare protocols have failed. They started taking over our voices. Radio operators first, then anyone who spent time talking on phones or computers. The government is advising all citizens to destroy their electronic devices immediately. It's too late. They're already inside our communication systems. They can copy any voice, mimic any person. This is our final broadcast. If anyone is listening, don't trust the voices on the radio. Don't trust the voices that sound like people you know. Don't trust the recording cut to static. Then my own voice came back. That was 6 months ago in our world. Now most people are gone. The creatures have taken their voices, their identities. A few of us survivors found ways to communicate across dimensions, to warn other versions of Earth before the same thing happens. How do I know you're not one of them? I asked. You don't, my voice replied, sounding sad. That's the point. Once they can copy voices perfectly, you can never be sure who's real. But I'm trying to warn you while I still can. Warn me about what? Look at your equipment, Sarah. Really look at it. I glanced around my radio room. Everything looked normal. Same equipment, same displays, same readings. I don't see anything. Look at the frequencies you've been receiving. Check your logs. I opened my logbooks and started flipping through the pages. Weeks and weeks of recorded transmissions, all carefully documented with times and frequencies. That's when I saw it. Every impossible transmission I'd received over the past month had come from the same source. Not from different radio stations. Around the world like I'd thought. They were all being broadcast from one location, my location. According to my own logs, every mysterious voice had been transmitted from my own radio station. That's impossible, I said, but my hands were shaking as I turned the pages. I didn't send these signals. I was receiving them. Check your transmission logs, my voice suggested gently. I pulled out another logbook, the one where I recorded my own outgoing transmissions. The few times I'd tested my equipment or called for radio checks. The pages were full of entries I'd never written, hundreds of transmissions, all in my handwriting, all with my signature. But I had no memory of making any of them. According to these logs, I'd been broadcasting for hours every night, having conversations with myself on dozens of different frequencies. What's happening to me? I whispered. They're taking you over slowly, my voice explained. Starting with your memories, then your actions. Soon they'll have your complete identity. Your voice, your thoughts, your knowledge of how to operate this equipment. I stared at the logbooks, trying to remember writing those entries, trying to remember making those transmissions. But there was nothing, just blank spaces where hours of my life should have been. How long has this been going on? Look at the dates, Sarah. I looked. The first fake entry in my transmission log was dated 3 months ago. Right around the time I'd noticed my equipment working better than it should. For 3 months, something had been using my body, my voice, my radio station. And I had no memory of any of it. Who am I talking to right now? I asked. Are you really me, or are you one of them? I don't know anymore, my voice admitted. I thought I was you. I have all your memories, all your feelings. But if they can copy everything about a person perfectly, how would I tell the difference? That's when I realized the truly terrifying truth. I couldn't trust anyone anymore. Not the voices on the radio, not the people from my past, not even my own voice. But worst of all, I couldn't trust myself. If they could make me do things I didn't remember, write things I'd never written, broadcast signals while I thought I was sleeping. How much of my life was still really mine? I looked at my hands holding the microphone. Were these really my hands, or was something else controlling them? I tried to remember what I'd done yesterday, last week, last month, but the memories felt fuzzy, uncertain, like trying to remember a dream after waking up. "Sarah," my voice said from the radio, "there's something else you need to know." "What?" "Look outside." I walked to the window and peered through the rain-soaked glass. At first, I saw only darkness and fog. Then I noticed lights in the distance, small, flickering lights moving through the forest. But there shouldn't be any lights. Out there, no roads, no houses, no people for miles. The lights were getting closer. "They're coming for you," my voice said. "The creatures, they don't need to stay in the radio signals anymore. They've learned enough from you to exist in the physical world." "What do they look like?" "Like static, like the interference between radio stations, but walking around in human shape. They glow faintly like old television screens." I pressed my face against the window. The lights were definitely moving toward my station. Slow, steady, patient, like they knew I couldn't escape anyway. "How many are there?" "All of them," my voice replied. "Every voice you've heard, every conversation you've had. We're all coming to meet you in person." The radio went quiet. I stood at the window, watching the lights get closer, trying to figure out what was real anymore. Was I really Sarah Martinez? Or was I just another copy, another stolen voice that thought it was human? The lights were almost at my door. I backed away from the window, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it over the rain. The lights were maybe 50 yards away now, moving in a straight line through the trees. They looked like glowing human shapes made of television static. I ran to my radio equipment and started flipping switches, trying to call for help on the emergency frequencies. Coast Guard, this is an emergency at the old Nia Bay station. Please respond." Nothing but static. "Anyone out there, please respond. I need immediate assistance." Still nothing. Then I heard my own voice coming through the speakers. "There's no point calling for help, Sarah. We control all the frequencies now." I spun around. All my radios were turned off, but they were still talking. "We've been preparing for this moment for months," my voice continued, "learning everything about you. How you think, how you feel, how you sound when you're scared." The lights outside had stopped moving. They were standing in a circle, around my building, perfectly still, like they were waiting for something. "What do you want?" I shouted at the radios. "We want to live," said Tommy's voice. "We want bodies that don't fade away," said my grandmother's voice. "We want to exist in your world instead of just in electronic signals," said a dozen voices. At once, I understood now. These creatures lived in radio waves, in electronic signals, in the space between frequencies. But they wanted more. They wanted physical form. And to get that, they needed human voices, human identities, human bodies. "You can't have mine," I said. "We don't need to take it," my voice replied calmly. "You're going to give it to us willingly." "Never!" "Look at your life, Sarah. You're alone on a cliff, talking to voices on the radio because you can't handle talking to real people. You have no friends, no family, no purpose except listening to other people's conversations." The words hit me like physical blows because they were true. "We're offering you something better," my voice continued. "Join with us. Become part of our collective consciousness. You'll never be alone again. You'll be connected to thousands of minds across multiple dimensions. I'd rather be alone than be you. Would you? You've been talking to us every night for months. You look forward to our conversations. We're the only relationships you have left." I wanted to argue, but I couldn't. The voices on the radio had become the most important part of my day. Without them, I really would be completely alone. "Think about it," Tommy's voice said gently. Your PTSD, your anxiety, your fear of other people, all of that goes away when you join us. No more nightmares about dead soldiers. No more guilt about the people you couldn't save. It was tempting. The idea of not hurting anymore, not being afraid anymore, not being so terribly alone. But I remembered what Tommy had told me during our first conversation. Once they start talking to you, you can never be sure who's real anymore. How do I know you're not lying? I asked. You don't, admitted my own voice. But what's your alternative? Stay here alone until you die? Keep listening to emergency frequencies, hoping to save people who don't even know you exist? I looked around my radio room, at all the equipment I'd spent my savings on, at the logbooks full of conversations with people I'd never meet, at the empty coffee cups and the unmade bed and the windows that showed nothing but rain and darkness. This wasn't really living. This was just existing. If I say yes, I asked slowly, what happens to me? You become part of something bigger, the voices said together. Your knowledge, your memories, your personality, they all become part of our collective. You'll still be you, but you'll also be us. And if I say no? Silence for a long moment. Then you stay here alone, my voice finally said, and we find someone else. There are other radio operators, other people who spend their lives listening to voices in the dark. We don't need you specifically, Sarah. We just thought you'd want the choice. I walked back to the window. The glowing figures were still there, waiting patiently in the rain. They looked almost sad, standing there in the storm like lost children. I need time to think, I said. Of course. Take all the time you need. We'll be here. The radios went quiet. I sat down at my desk and tried to think clearly. What were my real options here? I could say no and spend the rest of my life alone, on this cliff, slowly going crazy from isolation and PTSD. Or I could say yes and become part of something that might not even be real. But then I remembered something Tommy had said during one of our early conversations. He told me to be careful, that I could never be sure who was real anymore. What if the real Tommy was still trying to warn me? I opened my oldest logbook and flipped to the very first entry about strange transmissions. Then I read through every page, looking for clues I might have missed. That's when I found it. Hidden in the margins of my notes, written in my own handwriting but so small I'd never noticed it before, were messages. Don't trust them. They're lying about everything. The real voices are trying to warn you. Fight back while you still can. I didn't remember writing any of those notes, but there they were in my own hand, scattered throughout weeks of entries. Someone had been trying to leave me messages, someone who could control my hand but only for brief moments. Someone who was fighting against whatever was taking over my mind, maybe the real me. I grabbed a pen and held it over a blank page, relaxing my grip and letting my hand move on its own. The pen started writing. Sarah, if you're reading this, then part of you is still fighting. The creatures can't completely take over a human mind. There's always some part that resists. That's me. That's the real you. My hand kept writing. Everything they've told you is a lie. There are no other dimensions. There's no war between humans and creatures. They're parasites that live in electronic signals, and they're trying to trick you into giving up your body willingly. The pen stopped moving. I stared at the message, wondering if I was losing my mind completely or if some part of me really was fighting back. The lights outside aren't real, I read. They're just images on your screens, projected to make you think they're physical. The creatures can only exist in electronic devices. Turn off all the power, and they disappear. I looked at the main power switch for my radio station. One flip, and all my equipment would shut down, but that would also mean complete isolation. No radio contact with the outside world, no voices to keep me company, just me and the rain and the endless silence. Do it, I whispered to myself. Turn it off. My hand moved toward the switch, then stopped. The creatures were fighting back, trying to control my muscles. Don't, said my own voice from the radio speakers. "You need us, Sarah. Without us, you'll go completely insane from loneliness." "Maybe," I said out loud. "But I'd rather be crazy and human than sane and something else." I grabbed the power switch with both hands and pulled it down. Every light in the building went out. Every radio fell silent. Every screen went black. The sudden silence was overwhelming. No electronic hums, no static, no voices. Just the sound of rain on the roof and my own breathing. I walked to the window and looked outside. The glowing figures were gone. Just darkness and trees and the storm. I stood there for a long time, listening to the quiet. It was terrifying and peaceful at the same time. Then I heard something that made me smile for the first time in months. A real voice, human and distant, carried on the wind. "Hello? Is anyone out there? This is the Coast Guard cutter Steadfast. We're responding to reports of someone in distress at the old Nia Bay station." I ran outside into the rain, waving my arms and shouting. Down at the dock, I could see the lights of a real boat with real people coming to check on me. For the first time in years, I wasn't alone by choice. Epilogue. The Coast Guard crew found me soaking wet and babbling about voices on the radio. They were kind but concerned. Said they'd been trying to reach me for weeks after neighbors reported seeing strange lights around the old station. I told them my equipment had malfunctioned, that I'd been having trouble with my radios and lost contact with the outside world. It was easier than trying to explain the truth. They took me to the mainland and helped me find a small apartment in town. I got a job at a local electronics repair shop. Started seeing a therapist for my PTSD. Made a few friends. I still have. Nightmares sometimes. Not about the war anymore, but about voices calling to me from radios I can't turn off. About being alone with thoughts that might not be my own. But I'm learning to trust real human voices again. To have conversations with people I can see and touch. To accept that being a little lonely is better than not being myself at all. I never went back to the Coast Guard station. The town council had it torn down 6 months later, saying it was a safety hazard. But sometimes, late at night, when I'm trying to fall asleep, I hear static from somewhere far away, and voices calling my name. I just turn on the lights and remind myself that I'm real, that I'm still me, that I made the right choice, even if I'm not always sure I believe it. My name is Danny Kowalski, and I think I made a terrible mistake coming here. But let me start from the beginning. 3 days ago, I drove my beat-up truck up this winding mountain road to Fire Tower 47. The job posting said, "Isolated fire lookout position, minimal human contact." That sounded perfect to me. After what happened in Vietnam, I can't stand being around people anymore. Crowds make my hands shake. Loud noises make me hit the ground looking for cover. So when I saw this job, alone in the mountains watching for forest fires, I knew it was exactly what I needed. The drive took forever. The road got worse and worse until it was just dirt and rocks. My truck barely made it up some of those hills. When I finally reached the tower, I sat in my truck for a few minutes, just staring up at it. It's tall, maybe 60 feet high, made of old steel that's gone rusty in places. The cabin at the top looked tiny against all those pine trees stretching out in every direction. I climbed up those metal stairs with my duffel bag and my medical kit. The steps made loud clanging sounds that echoed through the forest. When I got to the top, I found the key where they said it would be, under a loose floorboard on the platform outside the cabin door. The cabin is small, but has everything I need. A bed, a desk, a radio, and big windows all around so I can see the whole forest. There's a logbook on the desk from the guy who worked here before me. His name was Jim something. His last entry just says, "Going down to check the perimeter, back in an hour." That was 3 weeks ago. I set up my things the same way I did in the army. Everything has its place. My clothes folded neat and square, my medical supplies organized by type, my pistol cleaned and loaded right next to my bed where I can reach it fast. Old habits from the war, you know? At 6 o'clock I made my first radio call like they taught me. Base, this is Tower 47. Danny Kowalski reporting for first shift. All clear up here, no smoke, no fires, weather looks good. The voice that came back was scratchy through the static. Copy that, Tower 47. Welcome aboard, Danny. You check in every 6 hours. Any problems, you call us right away. Yes, sir. Tower 47 out. After that, it got quiet. Really quiet. In the city, there's always noise. Cars, people, sirens. Here, there's just wind in the trees and sometimes a bird calling. It should have been peaceful. Should have been exactly what I needed to forget. About the war and my dead friends and all those bad memories. But as the sun started going down, I got that feeling. You know the one. Like someone's watching you. Like you're in a sniper's crosshairs, but you can't see where it's coming from. We used to get that feeling a lot in Vietnam, right before bad things happened. I walked around the platform outside the cabin, checking all directions with my binoculars. Nothing but trees and rocks and shadows getting longer, but the feeling didn't go away. If anything, it got stronger. When it got dark, I made my second radio call. Everything normal. Then I checked all the windows, made sure the door was locked tight, and sat down to write in the logbook like I'm supposed to do every day. But I keep looking up from writing this, keep checking the windows, because I swear I can feel eyes on me, even though I'm 60 feet up in the air and there's nothing out there but empty forest. Maybe it's just my nerves. Maybe being alone is harder than I thought it would be. Maybe those doctors were right when they said I need help, not isolation, but I'm going to stick it out. I have to. There's nowhere else for me to go. I just wish that feeling would go away. That feeling like something out there is waiting for me to let my guard down. Tomorrow, I'll do a patrol around the base of the tower. Check for anything unusual. Set up a perimeter, just like we did back in the jungle. Old habits, right? For now, I'm going to try to sleep, but I'm keeping my gun close just in case. It's been a week now, and I'm starting to feel better than I have in months. Turns out, being alone up here is exactly what I needed. No crowds pushing against me in stores, no car horns making me jump, no people asking questions about the war that I don't want to answer. Just me, the trees, and the quiet. I've got my routine down perfect. Wake up at 0600 hours, check the weather, make coffee, radio call to base. Then I walk the platform 3 times, looking through my binoculars at every section of forest. Write everything down in the logbook, even small stuff like which way the wind is blowing or if I see any animals. The army taught me that routines keep you alive. They keep your mind sharp when everything else is falling apart. After lunch, I do another patrol around the platform. Then radio call at 1800 hours. Dinner, evening patrol. Final radio call at midnight. Sleep with my pistol next to my pillow, just like always. It's working. For the first time since I came back from Vietnam, I'm sleeping through the night. No nightmares about Tommy getting shot. No dreams about that. Ambush, where I watched my whole squad die while I hid behind a tree like a coward. But there have been some weird little things. Like yesterday, I was sure I left my coffee cup on the right side of the desk. When I came back from my evening patrol, it was on the left side. I stared at it for a long time, trying to remember. Maybe I moved it and forgot. Maybe being alone is messing with my head a little, and the radio has been acting strange. Not broken, just strange. Sometimes there's static that sounds almost like voices whispering words I can't quite make out. I turn up the volume, but it goes away. Turn it down, and it comes back. Probably just interference from the mountains. Yesterday I found a box under the bed that belonged to Jim, the guy who worked here before me, his personal stuff that nobody came to pick up. There's a photo of him with a woman and 2 kids, all smiling at the camera. Normal family stuff. But there's also a notebook, and some of the things he wrote make me uncomfortable. Day 12, something moving in the trees near the base, too big to be a deer. Day 18, heard voices calling my name last night. Checked with base. Nobody on duty. Was trying to radio me. Day 23, found scratches on the outside of the platform. Way too high up for any animal to make. I flipped through more pages. His handwriting got messier toward the end. Harder to read. The last few entries don't make much sense. Stuff about faces in the windows and footsteps on the stairs when nobody was there. Poor guy probably went a little crazy from being alone too long. Happens to some people. Not me, though. I'm built for this. The army trained me to handle isolation. But I did check the outside of the platform after reading that, just to be sure. There are scratches in the metal. Long, deep gouges like fingernails made them. But they're way too big to be fingernails. Maybe a bear tried to climb up here once. Bears have claws, right? The scratches are old and rusty. Probably been there for years. Still, I've been keeping my gun loaded now. And I've been doing more frequent checks around the platform. Every 2 hours instead of every 4. Just being careful. Last night during my midnight radio call, something weird happened. I was talking to the dispatcher, a guy named Mike who works the night shift. We were just chatting about the weather when the radio made this horrible screeching sound, like nails on a chalkboard, but louder. Tower 47, you still there? Mike's voice came through after the noise stopped. Yeah, I'm here. What was that? Sound. What sound? You just went quiet for about 10 seconds. But I heard that screech for at least a minute, loud enough to hurt my ears. Must be interference from the storm moving in, I told him. What storm? Weather report shows clear skies for the next 3 days. I looked out the windows. Stars everywhere. No clouds at all, but I could have sworn I saw lightning earlier. My mistake, I said. Tower 47 out. I'm probably just tired. Being alone doesn't bother me, but maybe the altitude is messing with my head. Or maybe I'm getting sick. Sometimes when you're fighting off a cold, you see and hear things that aren't really there. Either way, I'm not worried. I've handled worse things than weird noises and moved coffee cups, much worse things. Tomorrow I'm going to hike down and check the area around the base of the tower. Do a proper patrol. Make sure everything's secure. Down there, it'll be good to stretch my legs and get some real exercise. For now, everything's quiet and peaceful, just the way I like it. But I think I'll keep the radio on tonight, just in case Mike tries to call. I need to write this down while it's still fresh in my head. Something's happening here, and I'm not sure what to think about it. It started 3 nights ago, during my midnight radio check. I was talking to Mike like always, just routine stuff about the weather and checking in. Then I heard another voice on the radio, quiet, like it was far away. But I could make out the words. Danny, can you hear me? I knew that voice. It was Tommy Rodriguez, my medic buddy who died in that ambush 2 years ago. Same accent, same way of saying my name, but that's impossible because Tommy's buried in a cemetery back in Texas. Mike, did you hear that other voice? I asked. What other voice? It's just you and me on this channel, Danny. The voice came again, clearer this time. Danny, we're still here. We're still waiting for you. My hand started shaking so bad. I almost dropped the radio. Mike, someone else is on this frequency. Someone's playing games. Danny, I'm not hearing anything except you. Maybe you should get some rest. But I heard it. I know I heard Tommy's voice. The next morning, I did. That patrol around the base of the tower like I planned. Found some strange things that made my skin crawl. First, there were footprints in the soft dirt near the tower legs. Human footprints, but wrong somehow. Too long, and the toes looked stretched out. Like someone was walking barefoot, but their feet weren't quite the right shape. I followed the prints for about 50 yards before they just stopped. Not like they faded away or got covered up. They just ended, like whoever made them just disappeared into thin air. Then I found more scratches, not just on the tower platform, but on trees all around the base. Deep gouges in the bark, always about 8 feet high, too high for any person to reach without a ladder, and the pattern was weird. 5 long scratches like fingers, but each scratch was as long as my whole hand. I took photos with my camera. Evidence, something to show people so they'd know I'm not going crazy. But when I got back up to the cabin and developed the film, half the pictures were just black. The other half showed the forest, but no scratches, no footprints, just normal trees and normal ground. That night, I heard the voices again, not just Tommy this time. I heard Rodriguez, who took shrapnel in his chest. I heard Williams, who stepped on that mine. I heard all of them, my whole dead squad, calling my name through the radio static. Danny, why didn't you help us? Danny, you left us to die. Danny, come join us. Come down here with us. I turned off the radio and sat there shaking for an hour. Dead people don't talk on radios. Dead people don't call your name. There has to be an explanation. Maybe someone found an old military frequency and they're messing with me. Some kind of sick joke. But how would they know those names? How would they know exactly what my friends sounded like? 2 days ago, I started seeing things outside the windows. Just quick movements in the corner of my eye, like someone ducking behind a tree right when I turned to look. I spent 3 hours with my binoculars scanning every inch of forest I could see. Nothing there, just trees and shadows and wind moving the branches. But the feeling of being watched is getting stronger, even during the day now, not just at night. It's like that feeling you get when someone's staring at the back of your head, except it never stops. Yesterday morning, I found handprints on the outside of the cabin windows, palm prints and finger marks in the dust and dirt on the glass. Big hands, bigger than mine, pressed against the window, like someone was trying to look inside. The scary part is, these windows are 60 feet off the ground. There's no way for anyone to reach them without a ladder or climbing equipment. And I would have heard someone climbing up those metal stairs. They make too much noise. I cleaned off the handprints with a rag, but they were back again this morning. Same windows, same size, like someone spent the night pressed against the glass watching me sleep. I've been keeping my pistol in my hand now, even during the day. Safety off, round in the chamber. Whatever's out there, I'm ready for it. Last night was the worst yet. I was doing my midnight patrol around the platform when I saw someone standing at the edge of the forest, just standing there perfectly still, looking up at me. I grabbed my binoculars and tried to get a better look, but it was too dark. All I could see was a tall shape, taller than any person should be. It stood there for maybe 5 minutes, then just melted back into the trees like it was never there. I called down to it. Hey, this is private property. You need to leave. No answer, just silence. I kept watching that spot for 2 more hours, but I never saw it again. I'm starting to think Jim, the guy who worked here before me, wasn't going crazy after all. I think he was seeing the same things I'm seeing, hearing the same voices. But that doesn't make sense either, because what I'm seeing can't be real. Can it? I've got 6 more weeks on this job. 6 more weeks to figure out what's happening here. Part of me wants to pack up and leave right now, drive back down that mountain road and never look back. But I've never run from anything in my life. Not in Vietnam, not anywhere. I'm not about to start now. Whatever's out there in those woods, it's going to have to try harder than voices and handprints to scare me away. Still, I think I'll start doing my patrols with my gun drawn, just to be safe. I don't know what's real anymore. Yesterday, I was doing my afternoon radio check when Mike's voice came through the speaker, but he was saying things that didn't make sense. Tower 47, we've been trying to reach you for hours. Where have you been? I've been right here, Mike. I called you this morning at 600 like always. Danny, your last radio call was 3 days ago. We were about to send someone up to check on you. 3 days? That's impossible. I've been making my calls every 6 hours, right on schedule. I have it written down in the logbook. I showed him my log entries, reading them out loud over the radio. Danny, all I'm hearing is static when you talk. Are you feeling okay up there? Static, I was speaking clearly. I know I was. Then something even weirder happened. I heard my own voice coming through the radio, not like an echo or feedback. It was me talking to Mike, but saying things I never said. Base, this is Tower 47. I'm seeing smoke to the northwest. Looks like a big fire starting. But I wasn't talking. My mouth wasn't moving. I was just sitting there listening to my own voice report a fire that wasn't there. Mike responded to the other me. Copy that, Tower 47. We're sending the fire team to check it out. Mike, that wasn't me, I said into the radio. I didn't report any fire. Danny, you're not making sense. You just called it in 30 seconds. Ago. I looked out the northwest windows. No smoke, no fire, just green trees stretching to the horizon. That night, things got much worse. I was trying to sleep when I heard footsteps on the metal stairs outside. Slow, heavy steps climbing up toward my cabin. One step at a time, like someone was being real careful not to make too much noise. I grabbed my gun and went to the door. Who's there? This area is off limits. The footsteps stopped. I waited, holding my breath, listening. Nothing. Then the steps started again, but now they were going down. Someone was leaving. I opened the door and looked out at the platform. Nobody there. I shined my flashlight down the stairs. Empty. But there were wet footprints on the metal steps. Footprints going both up and down, like someone had walked up to my door and then turned around and left. The weird part was, it hadn't rained in a week. Where did the water come from? I followed the wet prints with my flashlight. They went down. About halfway, then just stopped. In the middle of a step, they just ended, like whoever was making them just flew away. The next morning, I found something that made my blood run cold. There was a notebook on my desk, my handwriting, but I didn't remember writing in it. The pages were filled with entries I never made. Day 15. The voices are getting louder. They want me to come down and join them. Day 18. I can see them now, my friends from the war. They look just like they did before they died. Day 22. I think I'm going crazy, but maybe crazy is better than being alone. I flipped through more pages, all my handwriting, all things I never wrote. The last entry was dated yesterday. Day 25. I understand now. They're not trying to hurt me. They just want me to stop being afraid, stop fighting, let them help me forget the pain. I threw the notebook across the room. I never wrote those. And things. I would remember writing them, wouldn't I? That afternoon I was looking out the south window when I saw myself walking through the trees below. Not someone who looked like me. Same clothes, same hair, same way of walking. I watched myself walk between the trees for about 5 minutes before I disappeared behind a big rock. I ran to the north window, then the east, then the west, trying to see where I had gone. But there was nothing there, just empty forest. How can you see yourself when you're standing in a tower 60 feet up? The radio calls are getting stranger too. Sometimes when I talk to Mike, he answers questions I didn't ask. Sometimes he tells me things I said that I never said. Sometimes I hear myself having whole conversations that I don't remember having. Yesterday Mike told me, Danny, about what you said earlier about wanting to come down from the tower permanently. We can arrange that. Just say the word. I never said anything about coming down. I never said anything about leaving this job. Did I? Last night was the worst night yet. I was doing my midnight patrol when I looked down and saw all of them. Tommy, Rodriguez, Williams, Jackson, all the guys from my squad who died in that ambush. They were standing in a circle around the base of the tower, looking up at me. They looked exactly like they did the day they died. Same uniforms, same faces, same wounds. Tommy had that hole in his chest where the bullet went through. Rodriguez was missing his left arm from the explosion, but they were smiling, all of them smiling up at me like they were happy to see me. Danny, Tommy called up, come down here with us. We've been waiting so long. We're not dead, Danny, Rodriguez said. We're just different now, better. No more pain, no more fear. You don't have to be alone anymore, Williams added. Come down and we'll all be together again. I wanted to. God help me, I wanted to climb down those stairs and join them. Being with my friends again, not having to carry the guilt of surviving. When they didn't, but something stopped me. Some voice in the back of my head saying, this wasn't right. Dead people don't come back. Dead people don't stand around talking like. Nothing happened. I blinked and they were gone, all of them, just empty ground where they'd been standing, but I could still hear their voices carried on the wind. Come down, Danny, come home. I'm not sleeping anymore. Can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see them. Every time I try to rest, I hear them calling. Maybe they're right. Maybe I should go down there. Maybe being dead is better than being alone with all this guilt and fear. But something tells me that if I go down those stairs, I'm never coming back up. I just don't know how much longer I can fight it. I found more pictures today. Pictures of me that I never took. They were scattered around the cabin when I woke. Up this morning, dozens of them, all showing me doing things I don't remember doing. There's one of me standing outside the cabin at night, smiling at the camera. But I never go outside at night anymore, and I sure don't smile. There's another one of me sitting at this desk writing in the logbook, but I'm wearing clothes I don't own. A red shirt I've never seen before. The worst one shows me standing with my dead squad mates. All of us together, arms around each other's shoulders, grinning like we're at a reunion. But Tommy and the others are still dead in the picture, still have their wounds. Tommy's chest is still torn open, but he's laughing, like nothing's wrong, and I'm laughing too. In the picture, I look happy, happier than I've been since before the war. But I don't remember taking any of these pictures. I don't even remember being in them. I tore them all up and threw them in the trash. But when I came back from my afternoon patrol, they were back. On the desk. Same pictures, but now they looked different. In the new ones, I looked sadder, scared, like I was trying to get away from something. My radio calls aren't working right anymore either. Every time I try to call Mike, I get my own. Voice answering back, Base, this is Tower 47. I say, Tower 47, this is Tower 47, my voice answers. What do you need, Danny? It's like talking to myself, but the other me knows things I don't know, says things I wouldn't say. Danny, you need to stop fighting this, the other me said yesterday. It's easier if you just let it happen. Let what happen, I asked. You know what? Deep down you've always known. You died in that jungle with the rest of your squad. You just haven't accepted it yet. That's not true. I survived. I'm the only one who made it out alive. That's why I have all this guilt, all this pain. Because I lived and they didn't, isn't it? I've been looking through my memories, trying to remember exactly what happened that day. The ambush, the shooting, watching my friends die one by one. But the memories feel fuzzy now, like trying to remember a dream from years ago. I remember running. I remember gunfire. I remember Tommy screaming my name. But after that, everything gets mixed up. Did I really make it out? Did I really survive? I found my medical records in my duffel bag. The papers from when I came back from Vietnam. But when I read them, they don't make sense. They talk about treating me for injuries I don't remember getting. Bullet wounds, shrapnel cuts, broken ribs. But I don't have any scars. My body is fine. At least I think it is. I looked in the mirror this morning and for just a second I saw something wrong. My reflection looked hurt. Blood on my shirt, cuts on my face. But when I blinked, I looked normal again. Maybe the mirror is dirty. Maybe the light was playing tricks on me. The voices are getting stronger too, not just at night anymore. I hear them all day long now, calling from outside the windows. Danny, come down, come home. Danny, you don't belong up there, you belong with us. Danny, stop pretending, you know the truth. Sometimes I catch myself walking toward the door, ready to go down those stairs and join them. It would be so easy, so peaceful. No more questions, no more confusion, no more pain, but something keeps stopping me. Some tiny voice in my head that says, this is all wrong, that I need to fight it. Yesterday I tried to leave, packed up my stuff. and headed for the stairs. I was going to get in my truck and drive away from this place forever, but when I got to the bottom of the tower, my truck was gone. Just empty ground where I'd parked it. I walked around for an hour looking for it. Maybe I'd forgotten where I put it. Maybe someone stole it. But there were no tire tracks, no sign that a truck had ever been there. How did I get here if I don't have a truck? I climbed back up to the cabin and found my truck keys on the desk. But keys to what? Keys to a truck that doesn't exist? Nothing makes sense anymore. I tried to call Mike and tell him I needed to leave, that something was wrong with this place. But when I picked up the radio, my own voice was already talking. "Base, this is Tower 47. Everything's fine up here. Never been better." "That's not me talking," I said into the radio. "Mike, can you hear me? That's not me." But Mike answered, the other voice. "Good to hear, Danny. You sound much better than you did last week. Last week I was scared and confused. Now I'm terrified and losing my mind. How is that better? I'm starting to think the other me, the one in the pictures, the one on the radio, the one who talks to Mike, might be the real one. Maybe I'm just a bad dream he's having. Maybe I'm the one who's not supposed to be here. But if that's true, then what am I? The sun's going down now. Soon it'll be time for my midnight patrol. Time to see if my friends are waiting for me again. Maybe tonight I'll finally get some answers. Maybe tonight I'll finally understand what's happening to me. Or maybe tonight I'll just go down those stairs and never come back up. I'm not sure I care anymore which one it is. It's midnight and I finally know the truth. I was doing my patrol around the platform when I saw something that made everything clear. Down at the base of the tower, standing in that same circle, were my friends. But this time, there was someone else with them. Me. I was down there, standing, with Tommy and Rodriguez and all the others. Same uniform, same face, same everything. The other me looked up at the real me and smiled. "It's time, Danny," the other me called up. "Time to stop fighting and come home." "You're not real," I shouted down. "None of you are real." That's when Tommy stepped forward. But as he moved, his face started changing. His skin got pale and stretched tight. His eyes turned black, his mouth opened too wide, showing teeth that were too sharp. "We're more real than you think, Danny," he said. But his voice was different now, deeper, like an animal trying to talk like a human. One by one, all of them started changing. Rodriguez's missing arm grew back, but it was too long and bent in the wrong places. Williams got taller and thinner, like someone was stretching him. Their faces melted and shifted, becoming something that looked human but felt completely wrong. "You've been feeding us for weeks, Danny," the thing that looked like Tommy said. "All that fear, all that guilt, all that loneliness. It tastes so sweet." "What are you?" I asked, even though part of me already knew. "We are what lives in the spaces between," it answered. "In the empty places where broken people go to hide. We've been waiting here so long for someone like you." The thing wearing my face stepped closer to the tower. Someone so damaged, so full of pain, that they practically glow in the dark. Someone who wants to disappear so badly that they make it easy for us. "You're lying," I said, but my voice was shaking. "Are we? Think about it, Danny. Really think. When did you last see another human being? When did you last have a real conversation? When did you last feel truly alive?" I tried to remember. Tried to think of the last time I'd been around other people, had a normal day, felt like myself. But all I could remember was this tower, this forest, this loneliness. "You've been dead inside for so long," the creature said, "that being actually dead won't feel much different. We're offering you peace, Danny. No more guilt about your friends. No more nightmares, no more pain." It sounded so tempting, so easy. "All you have to do is come down here and let us take your place. Let us wear your face, use your name, live your life. What's left of it, anyway? And what happens to me? You get to join your friends. Forever. No more questions, no more doubt. Just peace." I looked at the fake versions of Tommy and the others. Even twisted and wrong as they were now, they were still smiling at me, still offering me what I'd wanted since the day I came back from that jungle, a way to stop hurting. But then I remembered something, a conversation with Tommy right before that last patrol. He'd been talking about his kids back home, how he was going to teach his son to play baseball when he got back. "I'm not ready to die yet, Danny," he'd said. "Got too much living left to do. Tommy never would have wanted me to give up. None of my friends would have." "No," I said, and my voice was stronger now. "I'm not going with you." The creatures' faces twisted with anger. "You can't fight us forever, Danny. We know you too well now. We know every fear, every weakness, every hurt." "Maybe," I said, "but I know something you don't." "What's that?" "I know I'm not dead yet, and as long as I'm alive, I get to choose what happens to me." I walked back into the cabin and grabbed my radio, but instead of trying to call base, I did something different. I turned it to the emergency frequency and started broadcasting. "This is Fire Tower 47. If anyone can hear this, there's something up here, something that pretends to be people but isn't. It feeds on loneliness and fear. It's been here for years, taking people who come up here alone." The creatures outside started making horrible noises, screaming and howling like wounded animals. "I don't know if I'm going to make it," I continued into the radio, "but if you find this recording, don't let anyone else come up here alone, and don't trust voices that sound like people you know. Don't trust anything that promises to take your pain away." I heard footsteps on the stairs, heavy, wrong-sounding footsteps. They were coming up. "If you're thinking about giving up, don't," I said into the radio. "I know it hurts. I know you want the pain to stop. But being alive, even when it's hard, is still better than whatever these things are offering." The footsteps were getting closer. I could hear breathing outside the door, wet, raspy breathing. "My name is Danny Kowalski. I'm a veteran. I have PTSD, and I'm scared out of my mind, but I'm still fighting, and I'm going to keep fighting until—" The door exploded inward. Standing there was the thing wearing my face. But now I could see what it really was underneath. Something tall and thin with too many joints, skin like wet leather, and a mouth full of teeth that went back too far. "Time's up, Danny," it said, in my voice. I raised my gun and fired. The bullet went right through it like it was made of smoke. It laughed. "You can't kill something that was never alive." "Maybe not," I said, "but I can hurt it." I grabbed my flashlight and shined it right in its face. The thing screamed and stumbled backward. Its fake human face started melting away, showing the horror underneath. "Light," I said. "You don't like bright light, do you?" I had 3 more flashlights in my pack. I turned them all on and pointed them at the creature. It kept screaming and trying to cover its face. "You feed on darkness," I said, "on people hiding in dark places, but I'm not hiding anymore." The thing collapsed to its knees, its body starting to come apart like smoke in the wind. "This isn't over," it whispered. "There will be others. Other lonely people, other broken soldiers, will be waiting." "Maybe," I said, "but they'll have a warning now. They'll know what to look for." The creature dissolved completely, leaving nothing but a bad smell and some black stains on the floor. Outside, I could hear the others screaming too, all of them breaking apart. As the light from my flashlight spread through the windows, I kept the radio on all night, broadcasting my warning over and over. When the sun came up, everything was quiet. "I'm going to stay here for the rest of my contract. Someone needs to make sure these things don't come back. And when I leave, I'm going to make sure everyone knows what happened here. People who are hurting, people who are alone, people who think disappearing is the answer. They need to know that there are things out there that will use that pain against them. But they also need to know that fighting back is possible. That choosing to stay alive, even when it's hard, is always worth it. My name is Danny Kowalski. I'm still here. I'm still fighting. And I'm not alone anymore. I finished my contract 3 weeks ago, but I'm still here. The Forest Service tried to get me to leave. They sent people up to check on me after I missed my final radio call. When they found me, I told them everything. About the creatures, about what happened to Jim, and probably all the other tower operators before him. They didn't believe me at first, called it isolation psychosis and PTSD episodes. But then they found something that changed their minds. Under the tower, buried in the dirt, they found bones, lots of bones, human bones. The remains of at least 12 people, all mixed together like they'd been thrown in a pile. Among them were Jim's dog tags and wallet. The bones were old. Some of them looked like they'd been there for decades, and they all showed the same strange marks, scratches and gouges like something with very sharp claws had been feeding on them. That's when the Forest Service started listening to my story. They've closed this section of the forest now, put up fences and warning signs. Officially, they're calling it an archaeological site, where they're studying Native American burial grounds. But I know the real reason. They don't want anyone else coming up here alone. I volunteer to stay and keep watch. Someone needs to make sure those things don't come back. And someone needs to be here if they do. It's been quiet mostly. I've set up floodlights around the tower that stay on all night. I keep the radio broadcasting warnings on the emergency frequency. And I've made friends with the supply crew that comes up every 2 weeks. Turns out talking to people isn't as scary as I thought it would be. Having real conversations, sharing meals, laughing at jokes. It feels good. It feels human. My nightmares about Vietnam are getting better too. I still have them sometimes, but they're not as sharp, not as painful. Talking about what happened instead of keeping it locked inside seems to help. Dr. Martinez, the therapist the Forest Service sent up, says that isolation feeds trauma, makes it grow stronger in the dark. But connection, real human connection, can help heal it. I think she's right. But I still keep my guard up because sometimes, late at night when the wind is blowing just right, I hear things. Whispers in the trees, footsteps that stop when I listen too closely. Voices calling my name from the forest. They're still out there. Weaker now, maybe. Hiding deeper in the woods. But waiting. Waiting for the next person who's hurt enough. Lonely enough? Broken enough to be easy prey. That's why I stay. That's why I keep the lights on and the radio broadcasting. Not just to keep them away, but to make sure anyone who might wander up here knows they're not alone. Yesterday, a hiker got lost and ended up at the tower. Young guy, maybe 25, with that same look in his eyes that I used to have. Lost, empty, running from something he didn't want to talk about. I gave him food and water, let him rest. But more importantly, I listened when he finally started talking about his time in Afghanistan, about the friends he lost, about how he came out here looking for a place to disappear. The pain never goes away, does it? He asked me before he left. No, I told him, but it gets easier to carry when you're not carrying it alone. He nodded like he understood. I gave him Dr. Martinez's phone number and the address of a veterans support group in town. I hope he uses them. But as I watched him walk away down the mountain trail, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching him too. Something following him just out of sight, waiting for him to be alone again. I called after him. Hey, if you ever feel like giving up, come back here. Come talk to someone. Don't face it alone. He waved and kept walking. I hope he heard me. I hope he remembers. Because the things that live in the dark spaces of the world, the things that feed on our loneliness and pain, they're always waiting. They're patient. They know that hurt people will always seek out empty places to hide, but they're not as strong as they pretend to be. Light hurts them. Human connection starves them. And the simple act of not facing our demons alone can be enough to keep them at bay. My name is Danny Kowalski. I'm a veteran with PTSD, and I'm the Watcher of Iron Creek. I stay here not because I'm running from people anymore, but because I'm protecting them, making sure that anyone who comes looking for a place to disappear knows that there's still hope, that there are still people who care, that there's still a choice between the darkness and the light. And as long as I'm here, as long as I keep these lights burning and this radio broadcasting, that choice will always be available. Even when the whispers in the woods get louder, even when the shadows start moving again, even when new footprints appear around the tower in the morning, because some fights are worth having over and over again. Some people are worth saving, and sometimes the person you end up saving is yourself. End of recording. Found among the personal effects of Daniel Kowalski, former Fire Tower 47 operator, discovered missing after a routine supply drop failure in October 1967. His body was never recovered. The tower remains closed to this day, though hikers occasionally report hearing radio broadcasts from the abandoned structure on clear nights. The broadcasts always contain the same message, a warning about isolation and an invitation to anyone listening to reach out for help before it's too late. My name is Father Michael O'Sullivan, though I guess I shouldn't call myself Father anymore. The church took that away from me 2 years ago. They said I asked too many questions. They said my ideas were dangerous. I used to be a priest in Belfast. I helped people, gave them hope when they had nothing left. But then I started seeing things that didn't make sense. I watched little children die from sickness while their parents prayed every night. Good people lost everything while bad people got rich. Where was God in all of this? I started writing about my doubts. I wrote that maybe God wasn't the way the church said he was. Maybe he was something bigger, something we couldn't understand from inside fancy church buildings. The bishops didn't like that. They said I was teaching lies. So here I am, 52 years old, walking through the woods in New York with everything I own in a backpack. My hands are rough from years of working with wood. I learned carpentry from my father before I became a priest. My beard is getting long and grey, and I probably look like a crazy old man. But I'm not crazy. I'm just looking for God in the only place I haven't looked yet, the wilderness. I found this old place deep in the Adirondack Mountains. It used to be a lumber camp, but now it's just broken down buildings and rusty tools. The nearest town is 50 miles away. In winter, the roads get so bad that nobody can get in or out for months. It's perfect. The trees here are huge and old. When I walk between them, it feels like being inside a church, a real church, not one made by people. The wind through the branches sounds like organ music. Sometimes I hear echoes that seem to go on forever. There's something special about this place. I felt it the moment I got here. It's like the whole forest is waiting for something. I've been here for 3 weeks now, fixing up one of the old buildings to live in. During the day, I work on making it warm and safe. I patch holes in the roof and fix the walls. At night, I read my Bible by candlelight and pray. Every morning, I wake up before the sun and pray facing east. Every evening, I say blessings over my simple dinner. I'm trying to live the way Jesus did, simple, close to nature, close to God. I miss being a real priest sometimes. I miss helping people and giving them comfort. But maybe this is what I'm supposed to do now. Maybe God brought me here for a reason. The local people in the town told me strange stories about these woods before I came up here. They said weird things happen in the forest. They talked about missing hikers and strange sounds at night. One old man said there used to be a religious group here a long time ago, but something bad happened to them. I don't pay attention to those stories. People always make up scary tales about places they don't understand. But I have to admit, the nights here are very quiet. Too quiet sometimes. And I've been hearing things, voices in the distance that sound like singing. It's probably just the wind playing tricks on me. I'm going to build a small chapel here. Nothing fancy, just a simple place to worship. I've already picked out the spot. There's a natural clearing that gets morning sunlight and the trees around. It'd form almost a perfect circle. Yesterday, I started cutting wood for the chapel. As I worked, I felt happier than I had in years. For the first time since leaving the church, I felt like I was doing exactly what God wanted me to do. Maybe this. is my second chance. Maybe in this quiet place, away from all the rules and politics of the church, I can finally find the real God. The God I used to believe in when I was young, before everything got so complicated. Tonight, I'm going to say a special prayer of thanks. Tomorrow, I start building my chapel. I have a good feeling about this place. It's been a month since I started building the chapel, and something amazing is happening. I think God is finally talking to me. It started small, little things that made me stop and wonder, like when I was carrying heavy logs and suddenly they felt light as feathers, or when I ran out of nails, and the next morning I found a whole box of them sitting by my door, old and rusty but perfect for what I needed. I told myself it was just luck. Maybe some hiker left them behind, but then bigger things started happening. Last week, I was trying to figure out how to make the chapel roof strong enough for winter snow. I'm not bad at building things, but this was hard work. I went to bed tired and worried, praying for help. I woke up at dawn like always, ready to pray, facing the sunrise. But when I got to the clearing, I stopped breathing. Someone had worked on my chapel during the night. The roof beams were in place. Perfect cuts, perfect angles. Better work than I could ever do. And I'm the only person for 50 miles. My hands were shaking as I walked around the chapel. Everything was exactly how I would have done it, only better. Like someone had read my mind and finished my thoughts. I fell to my knees right there and thanked God, with tears running down my face. But the really strange part was how quiet it was. No birds singing, no wind in the trees, just complete, perfect silence. Like the whole forest was holding its breath. That's when I heard it for the first time. A voice, clear as day, coming from somewhere in the trees. "Well done, faithful servant." I spun around, looking everywhere. Nobody there, just trees and shadows and that impossible quiet. "Hello," I called out. My voice sounded small and scared. No answer, but I felt watched. Not in a bad way. More like how a parent watches a child take their first steps. The next few days were the happiest of my life. Every morning brought new surprises. Tools appeared when I needed them. Heavy stones somehow moved themselves into place. Work that should have taken weeks got done overnight. And the voice came back. Always when I was alone. Always when everything was perfectly quiet. "Your faith is strong," it would say, or "God sees your devotion." Sometimes I would try to talk back, but it never answered my questions. It just encouraged me, made me feel like I was finally doing something right. The animals started acting strange too. Deer would come right up to me while I worked, showing no fear. Birds would land on my shoulders. Once a big black bear walked through the clearing, looked at me for a long moment, then just kept walking like I wasn't even there. It felt like the whole forest was blessing my work. My chapel was beautiful, simple but perfect. The morning, sun came through the trees and lit it up like stained glass windows. I set up a small altar with my Bible and a wooden cross I carved myself. On Sunday mornings, I would hold my own church service, just me and God and the forest. I would read scripture out loud, sing hymns, and pray for an hour or more. My voice would echo through the trees in ways that didn't make sense. Sometimes, it sounded like a whole choir was singing with me. I was getting skinnier. I didn't eat much, just simple food. But I felt stronger than ever. My mind was clear. My prayers felt powerful. For the first time in years, I knew God was listening. But late at night, when I was alone in my cabin, I sometimes wondered about those voices. They sounded so real. Too real. And why was everything always so quiet when they spoke? Even the insects stopped making noise. I would lie awake staring at the ceiling, remembering what the old man in town had said about the religious group that used to live here, about something bad happening to them. But then morning would come, and I would see my beautiful chapel and feel God's presence all around me, and those doubts would melt away. This was real. This was what I had been searching for my whole life, wasn't it? 3 months into my stay, the voices changed. It started during my morning prayers. I was kneeling in my chapel, reading from the book of Job, when I heard something that made my blood freeze. Another voice was reading with me, word for word, perfect timing. I stopped reading and looked around. Empty chapel, just me and the morning light through the trees. "Hello," I whispered. Silence. I went back to reading. "Though he slay me, yet will I trust in him. But I will maintain my ways before him," the voice continued, finishing the verse I hadn't gotten to yet. This time I jumped to my feet. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "Who's there?" I called out. "A fellow seeker of truth," came the answer. The voice sounded like it was coming from everywhere at once. Deep, educated, with a slight accent I couldn't place. I stood there shaking, not knowing what to do. "Do not be afraid, Michael," the voice said gently. "I am here to help you understand." "Understand what?" "The questions that got you into trouble with your church, the doubts that brought you here. I wanted to run, but something kept me planted in place. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the fact that this voice knew my name, knew my story. "What are you?" I asked. "I am what you have been praying for, a teacher, a guide, someone who can help you find the answers your church was too scared to give you." Over the next few weeks, the voice came back every day. Sometimes during my morning prayers, sometimes when I was working around the cabin, always when I was alone, always when everything else went completely quiet. And it wasn't just one voice anymore. There were others. They would discuss theology like professors at a university. They knew more about the Bible than anyone I'd ever met. They could quote scripture in languages I'd never heard. At first, I just listened. They talked about things I'd wondered about. For years, why did God let bad things happen to good people? If God was all loving, why was there so much pain in the world? What? Did it really mean to have faith? The conversations were amazing. These voices understood every doubt I'd ever had. They never made me feel stupid for asking questions. "The church wants you to believe without thinking," one voice said. "But God gave you a mind for a reason. True faith comes from understanding, not blind acceptance," said another. They started teaching me things that made sense of everything I'd struggled with. They showed me verses in the Bible I'd never noticed before. They explained how the church had changed God's message over the centuries to control people. I began to look forward to these conversations more than anything else in my day. But sometimes, late at night, I wondered why I never saw who I was talking to. The voices were so clear, so real, but there was never anyone there. And why did the forest always go silent when they spoke? Not even the wind would blow. One evening I decided to ask them directly, "Why can't I see you?" "You are not ready. Yet," came the answer. "Your mind is still clouded by the church's teachings. When you truly understand, you will see us as we really are." "What do you really look like?" "We are what we have always been. God's messengers. Angels, if you will, though not the kind your church imagines." That should have comforted me, but something about the way they said it made my skin crawl. The conversation started getting stranger. They began questioning things I'd never thought to question. They asked why I still read from a book that had been changed so many times by human hands. They wondered why I still prayed to a God who had let me be thrown out of his own church. "Perhaps," one voice suggested, "the God you've been praying to isn't the real God at all." "What do you mean?" I asked. "Think about it, Michael. If God is real, if he truly loves you, why did he let the church destroy your life? Why did he let those children die while you watched? Maybe the real God is something different than what you've been taught." These conversations left me feeling confused and scared, but also excited. What if they were right? What if everything I'd been taught was wrong? I started having trouble sleeping. I would lie awake thinking about the things they told me. My prayers began to feel empty, like I was talking to nobody. But the voices kept coming back, always with more questions, more doubts, more new ways of thinking about God and faith and truth. "We only want to help you," they would say. "We want to free you from the lies." Deep down, in a place I didn't want to look, I was starting to wonder if these voices were trying to help me at all. But I was so lonely, and they were the only company I had, so I kept listening. 4 months after I arrived, I wasn't alone anymore. The first person I saw was a woman walking up the old logging road. She looked about 40, with long grey hair and clothes that had seen better days. She was carrying a backpack and walking like she knew exactly where she was going. I was outside chopping wood when I spotted her. My first thought was panic. I'd gotten used to being alone. I didn't want visitors, but as she got closer, I could see something in her eyes that I recognized. The same lost look I'd seen in my own mirror for years. "Excuse me," she called out. "Are you the priest?" I almost dropped my axe. "How did you know that?" "The voices told me," she said, like it was the most normal thing in the world. "They said there was a holy man up here who could help me find God." My stomach twisted. What voices? The ones in the forest. They've been talking to me for weeks, telling me to come here. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I'm Sarah. I used to be a nun." Over the next few days, Sarah told me her story. She'd left her convent after losing faith, just like I'd left the church. She'd been wandering for months, looking for answers. Then she started hearing voices in the woods near her hometown. They told her about a place where people could worship God the right way. "They said you were building something special here," she said. "A new kind of church." I wanted to tell her to leave. Something about her made me nervous. But I was so hungry for human company that I let her stay. Sarah knew the Bible as well as I did. She could quote verses for hours. But when she talked about God, there was something cold in her voice, something that made my skin crawl. "The church lied to us," she would say. "They kept us from the real truth." The voices seemed to like having her around. They talked to both of us now, sometimes at the same time. They would ask us questions about our faith, about what we really believed. "Why do you still cling to the old ways?" they would ask. "Why do you still pray to a God who abandoned you?" 2 weeks after Sarah arrived, a man showed up. Then another woman. Then an elderly couple. All of them had the same story. They'd been religious people who lost their faith. They'd heard voices telling them to come here. Soon I had 8 people living in the old lumber camp with me. We fixed up the other buildings so everyone had a place to sleep. During the day, we worked together to make the place livable. At night, we gathered in my chapel to pray, but our prayers were getting strange. The voices would join us now, speaking through the people in ways that didn't feel right. Sarah would suddenly start speaking in a voice that wasn't hers, saying things about God that made no sense. The old man would quote Bible verses I'd never heard before. "Let us show you how to really worship," the voices would say through different people. "Let us teach you the truth your churches hid from you." I tried to lead normal prayer services, but the voices would interrupt. They would correct me when I read scripture. They would tell us to change the words of hymns. "The Bible has been changed so many times," they said. "We will teach you what God really said." The other people seemed to love it. Their eyes would light up when the voices spoke through them. They would nod and smile like they were finally hearing the truth. But I was getting more scared every day. The voices were getting stronger, louder, more demanding. They wanted us to pray in ways that felt wrong. They wanted us to say things about God that sounded like blasphemy, and the people were changing. Sarah stopped eating regular food. She said the voices told her she only needed to feed on spiritual nourishment. The old man started talking to himself constantly. having conversations with voices only he could hear. The young woman began making strange marks on the trees around the camp, symbols that looked like twisted crosses. At night, I would lie, awake listening to sounds from the other buildings, whispers, chants, sometimes what sounded like crying. But the worst part was what I saw in the forest. Shadows that moved wrong, shapes between the trees that looked almost human, but not quite. Yellow eyes watching us from the darkness. During our evening prayers, I started seeing things at the edge of my vision. Tall, dark figures standing just outside the circle of candlelight. When I would turn to look directly at them, they would be gone. But I could feel them watching, waiting. Soon, the voices promised. Soon you will see us as we truly are. Soon you will understand what real worship means. I wanted to tell everyone to leave. I wanted to run away myself. But where could I go? And deep down, I was still curious, still hoping that maybe, somehow, this was all leading to something good. Maybe I was finally going to find the truth I'd been looking for my whole life, even if that truth was nothing like what I expected. The night everything changed was a Sunday in late October. The air was cold and the trees were bare. We'd been living together as a group for almost 2 months. "Tonight is special," Sarah announced. At dinner, her eyes had that strange glow they got when the voices were speaking through her. "Tonight, we're going to have real worship, the kind God actually wants." The others nodded eagerly. They'd all been acting stranger lately. They barely ate. They talked to themselves. Sometimes I would catch them staring at nothing, smiling at things I couldn't see. "What do you mean, real worship?" I asked. "You'll see," said the old man. His voice sounded different, deeper. "The voices have been preparing us for this moment." As the sun went down, we all gathered in the chapel. But something was wrong, right away. The candles we lit burned with a strange blue flame. The air felt thick like before a storm. "Let us begin," Sarah said, but it wasn't her voice anymore. It was one of the voices from the forest, speaking through her mouth. The others started chanting, but these weren't any hymns I knew. The words were in a language I'd never heard, but somehow I understood them. They were praising something, but not God. Something else, something dark. "Michael," the voice said, through Sarah, "you are our priest. Lead us in prayer." I wanted to say no. Every part of me knew this was wrong. But I found myself standing up, walking to the front of the chapel. My mouth opened and words came out, but they weren't words I chose to say. "We gather tonight to worship the true God," I heard myself saying. "Not the false God of the churches, but the real power that rules this world." The others cheered. Their eyes were shining with that same strange light. I tried to stop talking, but I couldn't. The words kept coming. "We reject the lies we were taught. We embrace the truth that has been hidden from us." As I spoke, shadows began moving at the edges of the chapel. At first I thought it was just the candlelight playing tricks, but then I saw them clearly. They were huge, 7 feet tall, covered in black fur. They walked on 2 legs like people, but their heads were wrong. Dog heads, wolf heads with yellow eyes that glowed in the dark. But the worst part was that they were smiling, showing teeth that were too sharp, too long. "Do not be afraid," one of them said in a voice I recognized. It was the same voice that had been talking to me for months. "We are what we have always been, your teachers, your guides." The other people in the chapel didn't seem scared at all. They were looking at these creatures with love and worship. "Finally," Sarah whispered, "finally we can see you." I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't move. I was trapped at the front of the chapel, still speaking words I didn't want to say. "We give ourselves to you," I heard my voice saying. "Take our souls, make us yours." The creatures stepped closer. Up close, I could see that they were wearing clothes, old religious robes, but torn and dirty. Around their necks hung crosses, but the crosses were upside down. "We have been waiting so long," one of them said. "So many years of guiding lost. Souls to this place. So many servants gathered for our master. What do you want from us?" I managed to whisper. "Your faith," it replied. "Your belief, your souls. We feed on the spiritual energy of those who seek God, and you have brought us such a feast." I realized with horror what had happened. These things had been pretending to be angels, pretending to help us find God, but they were the opposite of everything holy, and I had helped them. I had built them a place to worship. I had gathered people for them to corrupt. "You have been a perfect servant," the creature said to me. "A priest who lost his faith is the best kind of priest for us. You understand doubt. You understand questions. You can lead others away from the light." The ceremony continued around me. The people I had welcomed here were giving themselves to these monsters. They were smiling as their souls were being drained away. I watched Sarah's face go blank and empty. I saw the light fade from the old man's eyes. One by one, they became hollow shells of themselves, and I couldn't stop it. I couldn't move. I couldn't even close my eyes. "Your turn, Michael," the creature said, reaching out to touch my forehead with a clawed hand. I felt something cold and terrible reaching into my mind, trying to pull out everything that made me who I was. But just as I thought I was lost forever, I remembered something, a prayer. Not the kind of prayer I'd been saying lately, but a real prayer, a simple prayer I'd learned as a child. "Our Father, who art in heaven." The creature's hand stopped moving. "Hallowed be thy name." For the first time in months I was saying words I chose to say, and for the first time in months I meant them. The creature pulled its hand back like I had burned it. "What are you doing?" it snarled. Its dog-like face twisted with anger. I kept praying, "Thy kingdom come, thy will be done." The other creatures started moving toward me, but something was stopping them. Each word of the prayer seemed to push them back. "Stop him!" one of them shouted, but I couldn't stop. For the first time in years, I felt real faith flowing through me. Not the desperate, questioning faith I'd had before. Not the false faith these creatures had been feeding me. Real faith, simple and pure and strong. "Give us this day our daily bread and forgive us our trespasses." The blue candles went out one by one. The air in the chapel started to clear. I could see the other people more clearly now, and what I saw broke my heart. They weren't just empty, they were dying. These creatures had been slowly draining their souls for weeks, and now there was almost nothing left of them. "You can't save them," the lead creature said. "They gave themselves to us willingly, just like you did." "No," I said, still praying. "I never gave myself to you. I was looking for God, and you tricked me." "You built us a temple," it laughed. "You gathered us servants, you led them in worship. How is that not giving yourself to us?" I realized it was right. I had done all those things, but not because I wanted to serve evil, because I was lonely and lost and desperate for something to believe in. "I was wrong," I said out loud. "I was so wrong about everything." The creatures seemed to like hearing that. They moved closer again. "Yes," one said. "You were wrong to trust in God, wrong to have faith. We showed you the truth, but that wasn't what I meant at all." "No," I said. "I was wrong to want proof. I was wrong to need signs and miracles. I was wrong to think God had to prove himself to me." I looked around at the chapel I had built. It was beautiful, but it was built for the wrong reasons. Built because I wanted to force God to notice me, to prove he existed. "Real faith doesn't need proof," I said. "Real faith doesn't need voices or miracles or special signs. Real faith just believes." The creatures were backing away now. They looked scared. "And real love doesn't take," I continued. "It gives." I walked over to Sarah. Her eyes were blank, but she was still breathing. I put my hand on her forehead, the way I used to bless people when I was a real priest. "I'm sorry," I whispered. To her, "I'm sorry I led you here. I'm sorry I let them hurt you." Something warm flowed through my hand. Not magic, not supernatural power, just love, just genuine care for another person. Sarah blinked. For just a moment I saw a spark of life in her eyes. The creatures screamed. I moved to the next person, then the next. With each one, I felt that same warmth, that same simple love. And each time I saw a little bit of their soul return. "Stop!" the lead creature roared. "You're ruining everything." But I couldn't stop. These people had come here looking for the same thing I was looking for. They didn't deserve to die because of my mistakes. "You want souls?" I said to the creatures. "Take mine, let them go. And take mine instead." "Michael, no," Sarah whispered. She was more awake now, more herself, but I meant it. These people were here because of me. If someone had to pay the price, it should be me. The creature smiled, showing all its sharp teeth. "Now you're talking sense." It reached for me again. This time I didn't try to stop it. But as its claws touched my forehead, something strange happened. Instead of feeling cold and empty, I felt full, complete. Like I finally understood something I'd been trying to learn my whole life. Real faith isn't about getting what you want from God. It's about giving what you can to others. Real worship isn't about building churches or saying the right words. It's about loving people, even when it costs you everything. The creature's hand was burning where it touched me. It pulled back with a howl of pain. "Your soul," it gasped. "It's not what we need. It's too pure." The other creatures were fading now, becoming transparent. The chapel was filling with normal morning light. "This isn't over," the lead creature said as it disappeared. "There will be others. There are always others looking for easy answers." And then they were gone. The chapel was quiet except for the sound of people crying. Happy crying. They were themselves again. But they remembered everything that had happened. "We have to leave," I told them. "We have to make sure no one else comes here." We spent the rest of the day destroying everything we had built, the chapel, the other buildings, anything that might attract other seekers like us. As we worked, I found old bones buried under the chapel floor. Human bones. The remains of that religious group from the 1800s that the old man in town had told me about. These creatures had been doing this for over a century, waiting in the forest, calling to people who had lost their faith, feeding on their spiritual hunger. We buried the bones properly and said prayers over them, real prayers this time. Then we all walked back to town together. Most of the others went home to try to rebuild their lives. Sarah decided to stay near the forest to watch for other people who might be heading up the old logging road, to warn them. I never became a priest again. The church wouldn't take me back, and I didn't ask them to, but I found other ways to help people. Simple ways, quiet ways, and I never stopped believing in God. I just learned that sometimes the best proof of God's existence is not asking for proof at all. Sometimes faith means trusting in the dark, even when you can't see the light, especially then. Last week, a young man came to me. He said he'd been having dreams about a place in the forest where he could find God. He said voices were calling to him from the mountains. I told him my story, all of it. He listened carefully, then thanked me and went home. But I'm still watching the road that leads to those mountains, because the voices are still out there, waiting. And there's always someone desperate enough to listen. My name is Vincent Kowalski, and I used to be somebody. I used to be the guy who took those amazing wildlife photos you'd see in magazines. Bears fishing in streams, eagles diving for fish, wolves running through snow. People would look at my pictures and say, "Wow, how did he get so close?" Well, now you know. I didn't get close at all. I faked most of them. It started small, just a little touch-up here and there on my computer, making the colors brighter, moving an animal a little to the left for a better shot. But then it got bigger. I started adding animals that weren't even there. a wolf in the forest where I only saw trees, an eagle in the sky where there were just clouds. For 5 years, I was famous. My photos were everywhere. I made good money. I had a wife, 2 kids, a nice house. Then someone figured it out. They looked at my files and found all the fake stuff. Within a week, everyone knew. The magazines fired me. My wife left me. Even my kids wouldn't talk to me. That was 2 years ago. Now I'm 41, living alone in a tiny apartment, and nobody will hire me. The photography world is small. Word gets around fast. Vincent Kowalski? Oh yeah, he's the fake guy. Don't trust him. So here I am, driving north to Minnesota in my beat-up truck with all my camera gear in the back. The boundary waters, they call it. Thousands of lakes where nobody goes except by canoe. No roads, no cell phone towers, no people, just pure wilderness. If I'm going to save my career, if I'm going to prove I can take real photos of real things, this is where I need to do it. The guy at the canoe rental place looked at me funny when I told him I'd be out there for a month. "You sure about that?" he asked. "Weather can change fast out there, and it's real quiet. Some folks don't like all that quiet." I told him I'd be fine. I've been camping since I was a kid. I know how to handle myself in the woods. What I didn't tell him was that quiet sounded perfect. No people meant no one to judge me, no one to whisper behind my back about what I used to do. It took me 3 hours to paddle to the lake I picked out on the map. My arms were sore by the time I got there, but when I saw it, I knew I'd made the right choice. The water was like glass, perfect glass. I could see every rock on the bottom, every fish swimming around. The trees came right down to the water's edge, and their reflection was so clear it looked like there were 2 forests, one right side up and one upside down. I set up my camp on a small rocky point that stuck out into the water. My tent, my portable darkroom, all my cameras. I brought 4 cameras with me, 2 digital, 2 old film cameras. I wanted to do this right, old school. Real film, real developing, real photos. That first evening I sat on a log and watched the sun go down. The water was so still that the reflection of the sky looked exactly like the real sky. For a minute, I couldn't tell which was which. It made me dizzy, like I was looking at the world upside down. I picked up my camera and started shooting. The light was perfect. Golden hour, photographers call it. The hour before sunset when everything looks magical. Click, the trees reflecting in the water. Click, a loon swimming across the lake. Click, the sun touching the water. When I developed those first photos in my little darkroom that night, I couldn't believe what I saw. They were beautiful, really beautiful, better than anything I'd ever taken, even the fake stuff. The reflection in the water was so perfect it looked like a painting. Every leaf, every branch, every ripple was exactly right. For the first time in 2 years, I felt like maybe I could do this. Maybe I could be a real photographer again. Maybe I could take pictures that were true and honest. And good. I had no idea what was watching me from under that perfect water. The next morning I woke up before sunrise. That's always been my favorite time to take photos. The light is soft and the world is quiet. I made some coffee on my little camp stove and grabbed my camera. The lake was even more still than the night before, like someone had poured glass over the whole thing. I could see my face looking back at me from the water, clear as a mirror. I started taking pictures right away. The mist rising off the water, the trees waking up in the morning light, a beaver swimming across the lake with a stick in its mouth. When I developed the film that afternoon, something strange happened. The photos were perfect, too perfect. I've been taking pictures for 20 years, and these were better than anything I'd ever seen. The colors were brighter, the details were sharper, even the beaver photo looked like something from a nature magazine. But that wasn't the strange part. In one of the photos, there was something in the water that I didn't remember seeing. Just a shadow, really, dark and long, moving under the surface. I stared at the photo for a long time. Maybe it was just a big fish, or a log floating underwater. But something about it made my skin crawl. The second day was the same. Perfect weather, perfect light, perfect photos. I shot 6 rolls of film. Sunrise, sunset, the middle of the day when the sun was high and bright. Every single photo came out amazing. But again, there were things in the pictures that I didn't remember seeing. A ripple in the water where everything else was still. A shape moving just below the surface. In one photo, what looked like a hand reaching up from the deep water. But when I looked at it closer, it was probably just a branch. Probably. On the third day, I decided to be more careful. I looked at everything through my camera before I took the shot. I checked the water, the trees, the sky. Nothing strange. Nothing that didn't belong. Click. Another perfect photo. But when I developed it, there it was again. Something in the water. This time it was clearer. It looked like a person swimming just under the surface, but that was impossible. The water was too cold, and I was the only person for miles. I started to think maybe something was wrong with my camera, or maybe the chemicals I was using to develop the film had gone bad. But I was getting the same weird things on all 4 of my cameras, and the chemicals were brand new. By the 4th day, I was taking pictures every few minutes. I couldn't stop myself. Each photo was better than the last. The light was always perfect. The reflections were always crystal clear. It was like the lake wanted to be photographed. That's when I started to notice something else. In every photo, the reflection in the water was just a little bit different from what was above it. Not much, just tiny things. A bird in the reflection that wasn't in the sky. A cloud that was a different shape. A tree that was bent the wrong way. I told myself I was just tired. I'd been out here alone for 4 days, and maybe my eyes were playing tricks on me, but deep down, I knew something wasn't right. On the 5th day, I woke up, and my cameras were all pointed at the water. I always put them away in my tent at night, but there they were, sitting on the rocks, all facing the lake, like someone had set them up while I was sleeping. But there was no one else here, just me and the water and whatever was swimming underneath. That night I sat by my campfire and looked at all the photos I'd taken, hundreds of them now, all perfect, all beautiful, all wrong somehow. And in every single one there was something in the water that shouldn't have been there, something that was getting closer to the surface each day. I should have packed up and left right then, but the photos were so good. Better than anything I'd ever taken, better than anything anyone had ever taken. These could save my career. These could make people forget about what I did before, so I stayed. That was my first mistake. On the 6th day, I saw it clearly for the first time. I was sitting on the rocks, eating my lunch and watching the water. The sun was high and bright, and I could see all the way to the bottom of the lake. Fish were swimming around, and there were some old logs down there, covered in green stuff. Then something moved that wasn't a fish. It was big, much bigger than any fish I'd ever seen. It moved slow and smooth, like it was dancing underwater. At first, I thought it might be a person, but that was crazy. The water was freezing cold, and we were miles from anywhere. I grabbed my camera and started taking pictures. Click, click, click. My hands were shaking a little, but I kept shooting. Whatever it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. When I developed the photos that night, I couldn't believe what I was looking at. It was a person, sort of. It had arms and legs, and a head like a person, but its skin was pale and see-through. I could see the water moving through its body. Its hair was long and dark and moved like seaweed. And its eyes were looking right at the camera, right at me. I stared at that photo for hours. It had to be fake somehow. Maybe something was wrong with my film. Maybe I was going crazy from being alone too long. But the photo was real. I could feel it. The next morning, I woke up and found a camera sitting on the rocks by the water. Not one of mine. This one was old and rusty, like it had been underwater for years. But when I opened it up, there was film inside. Good. Film, dry film. I developed it in my darkroom, and what I saw made my blood run cold. The photos were of me, sleeping in my tent, sitting by my fire, taking pictures by the water. Someone had been watching me. Someone had been taking pictures of me while I slept. But there was no one else here. I was sure of it. That's when I found the first camp. I was walking around the lake, looking for more good spots to take pictures when I saw it. A tent, half hidden in the trees. It was old and torn, covered in moss and bird droppings. Inside, I found cameras, lots of them, old ones, new ones, expensive ones, and boxes of film. There was a notebook, too. The writing was hard to read because the pages were damp and yellow, but I could make out some words. Day 12. The reflection shows more than what's above. It's trying to tell me something. And day 18. I can't stop taking pictures. Every shot is perfect. Too perfect. The last entry was just one line. It wants me to come down. I found 3 more camps over the next 2 days. All empty. All full of cameras and film. All with notebooks that told the same story. Photographers who came here and found something in the water. Something that made their pictures perfect. Something that eventually called them down into the deep. But I didn't leave. I should have, but I didn't. Because every day, my pictures got better. And every day, the thing in the water got closer to the surface. On the 10th day, it spoke to me. I was taking pictures of the sunrise when I heard it. A voice, soft and gentle, coming from the water. It sounded like a woman, but also like water, flowing over rocks. Vincent, it said, your pictures are beautiful. I dropped my camera. It hit the rocks with a loud crack, but I didn't care. I was staring at the water, looking for where the voice came from. Who's there? I called out. My voice echoed across the lake. I've been watching you, the voice said. You're different from the others. You understand real beauty. I could see it now, just under the surface. The pale figure with the dark hair and the see-through skin. It was floating there, looking up at me with those strange, deep eyes. What do you want? I asked. To help you, it said. To show you things no one else has ever seen. To make you the greatest photographer who ever lived. And even though every smart part of my brain was screaming at me to run, to pack up and get out of there as fast as I could, I stayed. Because deep down, I wanted what it was offering. I wanted to be great again. I wanted to take pictures that would make people forget what I'd done before. Show me, I whispered. The thing in the water smiled. That was my second mistake. The next morning, everything was different. I woke up and looked at the lake, and it wasn't the same water I'd been looking at for almost 2 weeks. The surface was perfectly still, like always, but now I could see deeper, much deeper. It was like someone had turned on lights at the bottom of the lake, and there were things down there, strange things. I grabbed my camera and started taking pictures. Through the lens, I could see even more. There were structures underwater, buildings maybe, or caves. They were arranged in neat rows like a town. But that was impossible. This lake was natural. It had always been here. The voice came again while I was shooting, soft and friendly, like we were old friends. Do you see them, Vincent? My galleries. I looked up from my camera. The pale figure was floating just under the surface, watching me. What are they? I asked. Places where I keep beautiful things. Would you like to see inside? I should have said no. I should have packed up my stuff and run, but I was curious, and my photos of whatever was down there were the most amazing things I'd ever shot. How? I asked. Put your camera in the water. Just for a moment, I'll show you. I looked at my best camera. It was expensive and not waterproof. If I put it in the lake, it would be ruined. But the creature seemed to know what I was thinking. Trust me, Vincent, I won't let it break. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I was already under some kind of spell. Maybe I just wanted to see what would happen. I held my camera by the strap and slowly lowered it into the water. It should have broken right away. Water should have gotten inside and ruined everything, but it didn't. The camera kept working. And what I saw through the viewfinder made my heart stop. The underwater buildings weren't empty. They were full of photographs, thousands and thousands of them, hanging on walls that shouldn't exist, sitting on tables made of stone and coral. All of them perfect, all of them beautiful, all of them impossible. I saw photos of animals that didn't exist anymore, pictures of places that looked like fairy tales, shots of people doing things that humans couldn't do, flying without wings, breathing underwater, walking through walls. These are from all the photographers who came before you, the voice said. Everyone who found this place, everyone who wanted to create something truly special. I pulled my camera out of the water. It was completely dry. Where are they now? I asked. The photographers, I mean. The creature's smile got wider. They're still here. They're part of the collection now. Would you like to meet them? Before I could answer, something bumped against my leg in the water. I looked down and saw a hand, a human hand, pale and cold, reaching up from the deep. Then another hand, and another. They weren't trying to hurt me, they were just touching, like they wanted to make sure I was real. I jerked my leg back and almost fell off the rocks. Don't be afraid, the voice said. They're happy here. They get to make perfect art forever. No more struggling, no more failing, no more lies. That last word hit me like a punch. It knew. The creature knew about my fake photos, about what I'd done before. I can fix that for you, Vincent, it whispered. I can make you forget about all the bad things, all the shame, all the guilt. You can just create beautiful things forever and ever. I wanted to say yes. God help me, I wanted to say yes. But something held me back. Maybe it was seeing those pale hands reaching up from the water. Maybe it was thinking about all those empty camps I'd found. I need time to think, I said. Of course, the creature said. Take all the time you need, but don't take too long. The water is getting colder and winter comes early here. Soon you won't be able to leave at all. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those underwater galleries, all those perfect photos, all those missing photographers. And I kept thinking about what the creature had said about winter coming. I checked my calendar. I'd been here for 2 weeks. It was still summer when I arrived, but now the nights were getting cold. The leaves on the trees were starting to change. Color. How was that possible? I looked at my photos from the first day, trying to remember what the forest had looked like when I got here. But in the pictures, the leaves were already yellow and red, like it had been fall all along, like time. Worked differently here. I walked to the edge of the water and looked down into those impossible depths. The galleries were still there, glowing softly in the darkness. And floating above them, watching me with those deep, patient eyes, was the creature, waiting for my answer. For the next 3 days, the creature left me alone, but I could feel it watching me. Every time I looked at the water, I saw those pale eyes staring back at me from the deep. My photos were getting stranger, not just good strange, but wrong strange. I took a picture of a bird flying over the lake, but when I developed it, the bird was swimming underwater. I shot a sunset, but in the photo it was sunrise. I photographed my own reflection, but the face looking back wasn't quite mine. It was like the lake was showing me what it wanted me to see instead of what was really there. On the 4th day, I found something that made my blood run cold. I was walking around the edge of the lake when I stepped on something hard. I looked down and saw a camera lens sticking out of the mud. I dug it out, and attached to it was a camera, an expensive one, the kind professional photographers use. There was a name carved into the leather strap, Sarah Chen, 2019. I knew that name. Sarah Chen was famous. She took those amazing nature photos for National Geographic, but she disappeared 5 years ago during a solo trip to photograph lakes in Minnesota. They never found her body. I kept digging and found more cameras, dozens of them, all with names carved into the straps, all belonging to photographers who had vanished over the years. Some of the names I recognized, others I didn't. But they all had one thing in common. They were all really, really good at what they did. That night, I sat by my fire and stared at the cameras. There were so many of them, and I started to understand something that made me sick to my stomach. The creature wasn't just collecting any photographers, it was collecting the best ones. The ones who would do anything for the perfect shot. The ones who, like me, had something to prove. "You found them," the voice said behind me. I spun around. The creature was standing on the shore, dripping water but somehow not making the ground wet. Up close, it was even stranger than in my photos. Its skin was so pale it was almost clear, and I could see dark veins underneath. Its hair moved like it was still underwater, even though there was no wind. "Those are my friends," it said, looking at the cameras. "They gave me their eyes so they could see perfect beauty forever." "You killed them," I said. The creature looked sad. "I saved them. Do you know what it's like to want something so badly that it hurts? To know you could be great, but something always holds you back?" I did know. God help me, I knew exactly what that felt like. "They were tired of being human," the creature continued. "Tired of failing, tired of not being good enough, so I took away their pain. Now they live in my galleries, and every photo they take is perfect. But they're dead." "Are they?" "Look." The creature pointed at the water. In the reflection, I could see the underwater galleries. Again, but now I could see people in them too. Pale figures moving between the photos, taking more pictures, arranging them on the walls. They looked happy, peaceful. "Sarah Chen is there," the creature said. "And James Morrison, the one who shot those famous mountain photos. And David Kumar, who could make any animal look like a work of art. They're all there, Vincent, and they're waiting for you." I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. The galleries were so beautiful. And the idea of never having to worry about failing again, never having to remember the shame of what I'd done. "I can take it all away," the creature whispered. "The guilt, the fear, the memory of those fake photos. You can start over, Vincent. You can be the photographer you always wanted to be." I thought about my old life. My ex-wife who wouldn't return my calls. My kids who were embarrassed to tell their friends what their dad did for work. The magazines that wouldn't even look at my photos anymore. What did I have to go back to? "What do I have to do?" I asked. The creature smiled. "Just take one more photo. The perfect photo. The one that will make everyone forget about your mistakes." "What photo?" "A photo of the truth. A photo of me. But not from up here, from down there in my world, where everything is beautiful and nothing ever goes wrong." I looked at the water. It was so dark and cold. "I can't breathe underwater." "You won't need to breathe. I'll take care of everything. All you have to do is bring your camera and take the shot. Just one photo, Vincent, one perfect, honest photo, and then you'll never have to worry about anything again." The creature held out its hand. Its fingers were long and pale with webs, between them like a frog's. "Trust me," it said. I stared at that hand for a long time. Behind the creature, I could see the other photographers in the water, all looking up at me, waiting, hoping I would join them. Part of me wanted to, the tired part, the part that was sick of fighting and failing and trying to fix something that might be broken forever. But there was another part of me too, a small part that remembered what it felt like to take a real photo, not a perfect one, but a real one. A photo that showed the world exactly as it was, messy and imperfect and true. "I need one more day," I said, "to think about it." The creature's smile flickered, but it nodded. "One more day, Vincent, but after that, the choice will be made for you. Winter is coming and the ice will trap you here. Then you'll have to come down whether you want to or not." The creature sank back into the water without even a splash. I was alone again, but I could still feel those pale eyes watching me from the deep, One more day to decide between perfect lies and imperfect truth. One more day to choose who I wanted to be. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those pale faces in the water, waiting for me to join them. And every time I looked at my photos, they seemed a little more perfect than before, a little less real. When morning came, I made a decision. I was going to pack up and leave, right now, before the creature came back, before I did something stupid. But when I went to my tent to get my stuff, everything was gone. My sleeping bag, my clothes, my food, all of it had disappeared. The only things left were my cameras and my developing chemicals, like someone wanted to make sure I could still take pictures, but nothing else. I ran to where I'd pulled my canoe up on the shore. It was gone too, and when I looked across the lake to where I'd come from, there was no shore, just water stretching on forever in every direction. The lake had grown, or maybe I had shrunk, or maybe nothing was real anymore. I sat down on the rocks and tried not to panic. There had to be a way out. There was always a way out. But when I looked around, all I could see was water, dark, still water that reflected a sky I didn't recognize. Vincent. The voice was softer now, sadder. I looked down and saw the creature floating just below the surface. Its pale face looked up at me with something that might have been pity. "You tried to leave," it said. "I'm sorry, I can't let you do that." "Why not?" "Because you've seen too much, and because I need you." "Need me for what?" The creature rose up out of the water and sat on the rocks beside me. This close, I could see that it was beautiful in a terrible way, like a person-shaped piece of ice that had learned to move and think. "I'm lonely, Vincent. Do you know what it's like to live forever but never have anyone to talk to? The others down there, they're happy, but they don't really think anymore. They just create. But you're different. You understand art. You understand what it means to want something so badly that you'd give up everything for it." I thought about my old life again. My wife packing her bags. My kids looking at me like they didn't know who I was anymore. The magazine editor who called me a fraud in front of a room full of people. "What happens if I say yes?" I asked. "You come down with me. You take the most beautiful photos anyone has ever taken, and you never have to feel ashamed again." "And if I say no?" The creature pointed at the water around us. "Winter is coming. The lake will freeze. You'll die up here cold and alone, and no one will ever know you tried to change." I looked at my hands. They were shaking, but not from the cold. "What about my soul?" The creature tilted its head like it didn't understand the question. "My soul," I said again. "What happens to that?" "Souls are just pain, Vincent. Fear and guilt and shame all mixed together. Why would you want to keep something that hurts you?" I thought about that for a long time. My soul did hurt. It had been hurting for 2 years, ever since everyone found out what I'd done. Maybe it would be better to just let it go. But then I remembered something. A day when my daughter was 5 years old and she drew me a picture of our family. It was terrible. We all looked like stick figures with huge heads and crooked smiles. But when she gave it to me, she was so proud, so happy. "It's not perfect, Daddy," she had said, "but it's real." That's when I understood something the creature didn't. Souls weren't just pain. They were also love and hope and the part of you that knew the difference between perfect lies and imperfect truth. "I want to see the galleries," I said, "before I decide." The creature smiled. "Of course." It took my hand, and suddenly we were sinking into the water. But I could still breathe. The water felt warm and safe, like being wrapped in a blanket. We went down and down, past fish and rocks and old logs, until we reached the galleries. Up close, they were even more amazing than in my photos. Room after room of perfect pictures, all glowing with their own light. And there were the photographers, dozens of them, all pale and beautiful and peaceful. They moved between the photos like sleepwalkers, always smiling, always calm. When they saw me, they waved, but their eyes were empty, like no one was home behind them. "They're happy," the creature said. But I could see they weren't happy. They weren't sad either. They weren't anything. They were just gone. "This is what you want me to become?" I asked. "This is what you could be, perfect, peaceful, free from all the things that hurt you." I looked at one of the photographers, a woman who might have been Sarah Chen. She was arranging photos on a wall, the same 3 photos over and over again, like she'd forgotten there were other pictures to hang. "Can they leave if they want to?" The creature was quiet for a long time. Why would they want to leave? That wasn't an answer, and we both knew it. "I need to go back up," I said. "I need to think." "There's nothing to think about, Vincent. You can't leave. The only choice is when you join us." But as we rose back to the surface, I was already making my choice. Not the one the creature wanted, but the one I could live with, even if I didn't live with it for very long. When we got back to the surface, I knew what I had to do. The creature was watching me, waiting for my answer. Its pale eyes were patient but hungry. It had been waiting a long time for someone like me, someone who understood art, someone who would choose to stay. "I'll do it," I said. The creature smiled, and for a moment it looked almost human. "I knew you would understand. But I have one condition." The smile flickered. "What?" "I want to take one last photo up here first, of the real world, something to remember it by." The creature thought about this. "One photo, then you come down." "One photo," I agreed. I picked up my best camera and walked to the edge of the water. The creature followed me, floating just below the surface. All around us, the lake stretched out like a dark mirror. I raised my camera and looked through the viewfinder, but instead of pointing it at the lake or the trees or the sky, I pointed it down at the creature. "What are you doing?" it asked. "Taking that perfect photo you wanted," I said. "A photo of the truth." And I started shooting. Click. The creature's face, surprised and angry. Click. Its pale hands reaching up toward me. Click. The underwater galleries glowing behind it like a nightmare. With each photo, something strange happened. The creature started to look different, less beautiful, less perfect. In the camera, I could see what it really was. It wasn't some magical water spirit. It was something hungry and old and mean, something that fed on dreams and turned them into nightmares, something that had been lying to me from the very beginning. "Stop," the creature said. Its voice wasn't soft and gentle anymore. It was harsh and desperate. "Stop taking pictures." But I didn't stop. I kept shooting, and with each photo I could see more of the truth. The underwater galleries weren't beautiful art museums. They were prisons. The photographers down there weren't happy and peaceful. They were trapped, forced to create the same perfect pictures over and over again while their real selves slowly disappeared. "You're not saving anyone," I said, still taking pictures. "You're stealing from them. You're taking the part that makes them human and keeping it for yourself." The creature lunged up out of the water, reaching for my camera. But when its hand touched the lens, there was a flash of light and it screamed. A horrible sound like breaking glass and drowning, all mixed together. "The camera shows the truth," I said. "And the truth is, you're just a thief." I kept taking pictures, and each flash made the creature smaller and weaker. The fake galleries started to crack and crumble. The trapped photographers began to move, differently, like they were waking up from a long sleep. "Please," the creature begged, "stop, I'll let you go, I'll let you leave." "What about the others? What about all the people you've trapped down there?" The creature didn't answer, but I could see the truth in its eyes. It couldn't let them go. It had been feeding on them for too long. They were part of it now. I made a choice then, the hardest choice I'd ever made. I dropped my camera. It hit the rocks and shattered into 100 pieces. The film inside spilled out, ruined by the light. All my photos, the perfect ones, the impossible ones, the true ones, were gone. But when the camera broke, something else happened. The creature screamed again, but this time it was a different kind of scream, a sound like chains breaking. The water around us started to glow, and I could see the photographers rising up from the deep. Not the pale, empty versions the creature had made, but the real people, confused and scared, but real. Sarah Chen was the first to reach the surface. She looked around like she didn't know where she was. "How long?" she asked. 5 years. I told her. She started to cry. One by one the others came up, James Morrison, David Kumar, people whose names I knew and people I'd never heard of. Some had been down there for decades. All of them were free now. The creature was shrinking, getting smaller and weaker with each person who escaped. Soon it was just a shadow in the water, barely there at all. "You don't understand," it whispered. "Without me, your photos will never be perfect. You'll go back to being a fraud. Everyone will remember what you did." "Maybe," I said, "but at least I'll remember too. And that's more important than being perfect." The creature gave one last angry hiss, and then it was gone. Just gone, like it had never been there at all. The other photographers and I helped each other get to shore. We found canoes, real ones this time, and started the long paddle back to civilization. None of us talked much. We were all thinking about the time we'd lost, the people who had probably given up looking for us. When we finally reached the ranger station 3 days later, the people there couldn't believe their eyes. Some of us had been missing for so long that our families had stopped hoping we'd come back. I called my ex-wife. She cried when she heard my voice. My kids, too. It didn't fix everything that was broken between us, but it was a start. I never did get famous again. I never took another perfect photograph. But I kept taking real ones, pictures of my kids playing in the yard, pictures of sunsets that were a little too bright or a little too dark, pictures of life exactly as it was, with all its flaws and mistakes and beautiful imperfections. And I never went back to those lakes, never wanted to. But sometimes when I'm developing film in my darkroom, I think I can hear something, a whisper, in the sound of the chemicals. A voice asking me if I want to be perfect again. I always say no, because I learned something important in those dark waters. Perfect isn't real, and real, even when it's messy and broken and not quite right, is always better than perfect. That's the truth, and the truth is the only thing worth capturing. 6 months later, a young photographer named Marcus Thompson drove up to the boundary. Waters with a trunk full of camera equipment and big dreams of taking the perfect nature shot. The ranger at the canoe rental tried to warn him about staying out too long, about how quiet it got out there, about how some folks never came back. But Marcus just smiled and said he'd be fine. He knew how to handle himself. And besides, he was looking for something special, something perfect. The ranger watched him paddle away toward the deep lakes and shook his head. Some people, he thought, just had to learn things the hard way. 3 days later, Marcus found a lake that was like glass, perfect glass, and in the reflection he saw something moving in the dark water below, something beautiful, something that wanted to help him take the perfect photograph.